to order to faithfully discharge the business of the people of Durham. His Honor is en route. He'll be here momentarily, but we will go ahead and proceed until he gets here. Good afternoon, Madam Clerk. Would you please call the roll?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Mayor Williams is delayed. Mayor Pro Tem Middleton.
I'm here.
Councilmember Baker.
Here.
Councilmember Caballero.
Here.
Councilmember Cook.
Here.
Councilmember Freeman has an excused absence, and Councilmember Rist.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Honorable colleagues, it's good to see you, to the staff and everyone in the room, and to our residents and neighbors who, on whatever platform you may be watching, thank you for joining us today. At this time, I'm going to yield to my honorable colleagues for any announcements they may have. Councilmember Cook.
Thank you. Good to be with you all today. Just have a few quick announcements. The first is that, I sound like a broken record, but early voting is still open. So I think it's great to check in with your friends and family to see if they have a plan to vote. And I'm just going to tell you all that my plan is to early vote tomorrow morning for accountability. So remember, you can always check to see if your friends have voted, but you cannot see who anyone votes for. But whether or not you vote is public record. So please do go vote. The next thing that I wanted to say was that I had the pleasure this morning of meeting with some folks from our regional HUD office, as well as the Durham Housing Authority, and some other activists in the community, and some folks from NCCU. Happy homecoming to our Eagles. NCCU has been granted a partnership with HUD. There's going to be money available for a pilot program to do fair housing work. So I'm really excited about that partnership and excited to be involved. And I think there was a lot of really good conversation about how to elevate the voices of the people who are actually living in the housing community sites and make sure that their interests are being correctly represented. And it's something that I think that we've fallen short of in the past. And we have a lot of really cool upcoming projects in terms of development and new housing, but we have struggled to have good communication with our tenants, particularly that are living there. So I'm really hopeful about that pilot program, and I'm excited to see where that goes. I'm really, really proud that our own NCCU is going to be heading that up with HUD. So that's really awesome. The third thing is that there is a town hall this evening, and I'm going to read the address because I want to make sure everyone has it. So it's going to be tonight, doors open at 6:30. It starts at 7. It's at the Walltown Recreational Center, 1308 West Club Boulevard, 1308 West Club Boulevard. Again, doors at 6:30. The program will start at 7. It'll be from 7 to 8. And I think we've got lots of great staff folks coming to do presentations there tonight. So excited to see y'all at the town hall, which I will be coming to after another meeting with HUD and NCCU this afternoon. And then the final thing is that I would be requesting an excused absence for the next work session. So at the appropriate time, I will ask for that motion to be made. And those are my announcements. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Baker. Oh, I'm sorry. Councilmember Caballero, good afternoon.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It is that season. Remember to get your flu and COVID shots, ladies and gentlemen. And also wash hands, take vitamin C, and whatever else out of precaution, not COVID, but just don't want to get anyone sick. And additionally, yes, go vote. Please vote yes on your bonds. They're on the back of your ballot. They're the last 2 questions for voters. And I think I just saw somebody.
He was right biking by.
Okay, okay. Ladies and gentlemen, the mayor has arrived. He's arrived on a bike. Anyway, that's all. Thank you.
Councilmember Rist, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Greetings, Madam City Manager, colleagues, citizens here and online. Just a couple of things. There's always a lot going on in the Bull City. I want to echo my colleagues' comments about staying healthy in this time of year. I'm also got a little bit of crud myself, so I'm masking up as well to be safe. So since Monday's council meetings, there's been more presentations to community groups on the upcoming bond. This week on Monday, it was the Coalition for Affordable Housing and Transit. And then on Tuesday, the Watts Hospital Hillendale Neighborhood Association also had a meeting online. So thanks to those groups for inviting us to talk about the $200 million 2 bonds for streets, sidewalks, and parks. Any other neighborhood or civic groups that would like a presentation, you can still sign up on the city's website, the Connecting Durham 2024 website. And finally, I just got to thank the dedicated staff. I see Tim. Tim's been at like almost every meeting, right? So thanks, Tim, for being there. But also all the other staff from Public Works, from Parks and Rec that have been at all these meetings to communicate to the residents the nuts and bolts of what's in these bonds. So thank you so much for that. And most of all, since early voting has already started, please get out and vote yes for both bonds. The second thing is yesterday I had the honor of being part of the groundbreaking. Here's my little hard hat here. For Southside Revitalization Phases 3 and 4. Thank you so much, Reginald Johnson of Community Development. For those that don't know, this is a crucial redevelopment project for the city of Durham, led by the Community Development Department. It's also the first time, right, Reginald, that the city has partnered with the county on an affordable housing project. Really important. So thanks to the county and all the other funding partners. Together, phases 3 and 4 will include 100 affordable units, some for households below 30% AMI, the rest for households below 60% AMI. So it's a big completion of the Southside project. Can't be more excited about that. Thank you, Community Development. And it'll be a big project for the city of Durham. So excited about that. And with that, the mayor's here, having ridden in on his little bike. So we saw you zoom by the door there. So good to have you here. Thanks, I yield.
Thank you, Councilmember. Colleagues, I don't have any announcements today. Before I yield to the mayor for his announcement, I'm going to discharge of the matter of an excused absence for Councilmember Cook. By my reckoning, I think that work session is November 7th. So I'll entertain a motion to excuse Councilmember Cook for the November 7th work session.
So moved.
I hear a motion in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries unanimously. You are excused, ma'am. Madam Mayor, Mr. Mayor, I yield to you. Good afternoon and welcome.
All right, I too will need an excused absence, December 5th. That is I'm not sure what it is. The December 5th work session, yeah.
I'll entertain a motion to excuse the mayor from the December 5th work
So
session.
moved.
I hear a motion in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those
Thank
opposed?
you.
All right, you're excused.
Thank you. So I'm pretty sure, because Durham has been doing some pretty cool things lately, so I'm pretty sure it's probably covered. All of the housing stuff, the bus stuff, did you all cover that? Okay, but you talked about the affordable housing south side? Okay, that was great. Only in Durham, right? Where you break ground and cut ribbons all in the same vein. And just the amazing work that our staff is doing. Director Johnson, thank you and your team for your leadership. In the speaking program, the agenda can actually tell you very well how intricate it is to make these things happen and all of the partners that play a role. I do wish it was simpler than that, but whatever it takes. So thank you all. Left that event and went over to Southern High School. It's full circle for me because that is where I taught. And Durham Public Schools, we were with the EPA Administrator, Michael Regan, and he was there. And we, along with others, Congresswoman Valerie Fouché, school board members, county commissioners, we were able to take a ride on one of the new electric school buses. Durham Public Schools will be receiving 38 new electric school buses. And, you know, being a country boy like myself, who used to ride an hour and a half on the bus to get to school, because I was the first one to get, you know, my mom was the bus driver, so I had to get up with her and do the entire route. And the bus being as loud as it is and all the fumes, it just feels good to have something quieter and, you know, not have to have the students screaming over one another and then getting in a quiet classroom, sitting in a straight row. This just makes so much more sense and a step in the right direction. So grateful for the millions of dollars that we're getting from the federal government, the Biden-Harris administration, who helped make the affordable housing units happen, as well as the Biden-Harris administration, who is helping to make, you know, us get more school buses that are electric. It is homecoming. I would not make a news story. I'll just have a little fun, but I'll be around having a good time. So happy homecoming to all of the Eagles out there. And I just left from the McNair Scholars gathering downtown Durham here. And it just feels good to see so many HBCU students that are, all they do is research. And I'm so grateful for that. All right, let's get to it. Yeah, Ronald McNair, he created that program for HBCU students to have the same access to professional networks and and scholarship like their counterparts. Yeah, okay. That's all right. All right. All right. I will pass the priority items now to the Madam Manager. Oh, I'm sorry. Colleagues, I also just want to thank you all for a really, really good meeting Monday night. I know it was a meeting like any other, but it wasn't like any other. It was just really efficient. Councilmember Baker, I think Monday night also was a really good example of using your expertise to help push the envelope and the checks and balances on that. Councilmember Cook, Councilmember Rist, just want to highlight and thank you all for just really pushing the envelope and being a very efficient council and pushing what we need to and being realistic and practical what we need to as well, and being innovative and getting new standards. But we are a checks and balance process ourselves, and I just want to highlight that. So thank you all. All right, Madam Manager.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the Durham City Council. I have a couple of priority items for you this afternoon. Agenda item number 2, the American Rescue Plan Act ARPA project, Fayetteville Street Corridor Planning and Infrastructure Community Assistance Initiative. This item is being referred back to the City Manager's office. Agenda item number 14, recruitment of city manager position. A supplemental item was added and includes a presentation for you this afternoon, and the department expects that presentation to be about 20 minutes. Thank you. Those are the only 2 items I have.
Thank you so much. Mr. Council Attorney.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor Williams, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of the City Council. I'm Senior Deputy City Attorney Fred Lamar. I'm in for the City Attorney Kim Rayberg. The City Attorney's Office does have a priority item. Today, it's a request, a motion to go into closed session. I can read you that motion now or wait until the end of the regular business for you to vote on that. It's your option. Okay, I'll go ahead and read the motion now, which is to hold a closed session for attorney-client consultation pursuant to GS 143-318.11A3 for the City Council to consider and give instructions concerning the proposed settlement of contract construction claims related to the South Ellerby Restoration Phase 2 project.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to address that now.
So moved.
Second.
All right. It's been
Thank
moved and
you.
properly seconded. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, so at the end, we'll just go directly into it.
Great.
And let me go back and go ahead and approve the manager's priority item. Entertain a motion.
So
Move to approve.
second.
Okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. All right, Madam Clerk?
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. I do have a few priority items. I had reached out to you about shifting the board and committee report to my priority item section. I just wondered if there was consensus to do that.
That's fine. Colleagues?
Everyone's good with that? Okay. So I'll do that today. And then item 9, a presentation has been updated. Presentation by the Environmental Affairs Board related to the EAB Sustainable Decision-Making Tool. Their presentation was updated and they will be presenting today for 30 minutes. We do have a new timer, I'll have you know, with a consistent ring. And for the closed session today, we need to to stop the stream downstairs, so you'll need to provide staff with a few minutes as we transition to that. And that's all I
Oh,
have.
gosh, okay. I was
And
like,
then
stop
the,
stream. I thought you said on a water stream. I'm
No,
sorry.
stop the streaming of the meeting. And so today for the Board and Committee report, the Durham Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission appointment, Mary Ellen Green has been nominated by council for the Recreation, Urban Trails and Greenways position. And that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. I will now read the consent agenda. Number 1, Durham Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission appointment. Number 2, American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA project, Federal Street Corridor Planning and Infrastructure Community Assistance Initiative. Number 3, it's been referred back, okay. Number 3, Sister Cities Agreement with Kunshan, China, which we'll be having. Yeah.
I have a question about that. I don't.
Mhm.
we pull it
Just pull it, just pull it.
Yeah, pull it.
Yeah, number 3, call. Number 4, U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD Grant Project Ordinances, fiscal year 2024-2025, CDBG, fiscal year 2024-2025, Home, fiscal year 2024-2025, ESG, fiscal year 2024-2025, HOPWA, 2023 Continuum of Care Program. Number 5, resolution authorizing the virtual city auction. Number 6, cooperative group purchase contract. Number 7, cooperative group purchase contract, automated refuse trucks. Number 8, the Department of Justice, Office of Justice Programs, Bureau of Justice Assistance, 2024 Justice and Mental Health Collaboration Program, Grant Project Ordinance.
Or are you gonna?
Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say that I was excited about it, but I don't want to pull it.
Same.
All right. Number 9, presentation by the Environmental Affairs Board related to the EAB's Sustainable Decision-Making Tool. Number 10, American Rescue Plan Act update, ARPA. Number 11, zoning map change, Landley townhouses. Number 12, consolidated annexation, Sharon Grove. Number 13, consolidated annexation, Winsford at the park. And we have a citizens matter, recruitment of city manager position presentation. All right. Right. Yeah, number 3. All right. Yeah, number 3. Call. Ms. Councilmember Rist.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know whether it's Derek the person or is that you, or I don't know who the resource person is on this question. Who you are? Yeah. It was a simple question. It's just that I know we're talking about having a sister city relationship with Kunshan. We also have one currently with Zhuzhou, China. So what does that mean to have two? I mean, certainly the more the merrier, right? But what is it? Is it typical to have like 2 sister cities from one?
Yeah, so
country?
these cities
curious how those-
they're millions of people. They are.
No, yeah, I'm just wondering about the sort of like what that means having in the same country 2 sister cities.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That happens all the time. Yeah. We, you're the liaison. You have any remarks on
Yeah,
that?
there's nothing that precludes from us from having 2 cities in one country. China, of course, 1 billion people. It's a huge nation. So there's even cultural differences from province to province, as you know. So, but the short answer is there's nothing that precludes us from having, if we want to do another city in England or Mexico, we can certainly do that. So.
Hopefully we'll get more cities, actually. Derek, you want to respond?
And I believe Mark Goodwillie from our Sister Cities Committee is here and he can speak to, Derek Stanfield, Office of the Mayor. I believe Mark Goodwillie here from Sister Cities Committee can speak to if that is a regularity with other cities having multiple. Is he either in person or virtually?
We'll say I will say while we're waiting, I'm really looking forward to, I think this is, you guys have had them come in person this time, the MOUs before. Yeah. It'll be the first one under my administration where we actually have them come in and we'll have a ceremonial signing to codify the relationship. And we are in talks of kicking off Monrovia, Liberia. So that's why we had the mayor here recently. And then the president came shortly after, and there's some others that are interested. We just had Councilmember Rist and I met with the German embassy, and The mayor of Freiburg is a good friend of mine, and we're already kicking that conversation off, Martin Horn. And so, yeah.
Maybe while we're waiting, you could just speak a little bit to how we find these folks and why we are choosing them. Just give us a little bit of a, for the folks at home, just give us a little summary, or whoever wants to do that.
Sure, sure. Good, no, great question. The relationships oftentimes start off with a delegation of our own residents in the city of Durham who are connected to the country or to the city. Our sister city, our leadership of our sister cities, they do great work in kind of monitoring our demographics in the city and trying to start relationships with folk from different places. It's usually starts off with informal conversations or overtures from residents in our city who are from that country or that city. We had, some of you may remember, we put our relationship with Kostroma, Russia, on hold after the war. And much of that was also because of conversations with not only Sister Cities, the national organization, but residents in our city as well. There's always a prerequisite, not a prerequisite, but we always look for a representative group of folk in our own city from that particular city or country, and then a particular city, and then build on it from there. We're looking for more.
Yeah, I will say part of the conversation the other day with the German embassy was, what's the temperature in the United States right now, specifically North Carolina? You know, and it's easier to come down to the ground level, you know, and speak with us, you know, city to city, than trying to look at a national government. And, you know, so from potential trade opportunities to definitely cultural sharing, it just really, my bias is I think that, you know, Sister Cities is one of the avenues that's going to help save the world from the divisiveness that we're going through right now. But yeah, it's really just developing a relationship with other cultures and communities where we can just share ideas.
People to people is one of the principles.
I know our the whole heart team concept is a international sensation right now. So I think we're good, Derek. I think we're good.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we can now get to our presentations. All right, item number 9, EAB. Nope. So, welcome. It's good to see you. So you want to press the button on the right there that says on off. Yep, there you go.
Now everybody can hear me.
Now the world can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having us. My name is Jennifer Kerrigan. I am the chair of the Environmental Affairs Board. This is Barrett Dollar. I'll be introducing us more in a little bit, but she's a graduate student researcher that assisted the EAB with this project. I have served on the Environmental Affairs Board for 5.5 years, and this is my second term as chair. And on behalf of the EAB, we are very excited to be presenting this tool to you today for your feedback. So as a reminder to all, the Environmental Affairs Board is a city-county board. We collaborate with community members, businesses, and organizations to provide guidance to you, our elected officials and county commissioners, as well as staff on actions and policies that create a sustainable and safe environment for all residents and preserve our natural ecosystems and resources. So why are we presenting to you today? The pre-reads for you all was a lot more information than I'm going to be presenting in this presentation. We provided the full report as well as a short executive summary about the tool that I'll be talking to you today. Right now, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the background about why we are bringing this tool and proposing it to you and how it was developed, so you have a little bit more context about it. So the Environmental Affairs Board was very involved in the creation of the environmental goals and actions for the comprehensive plan. And we want our elected officials to have the tools and information necessary to make decisions that achieve that comprehensive plan. So in conversations with several county commissioners, they expressed a desire to have more information available to them about the environmental impacts of decisions that they were making and how that aligns with Durham's existing sustainability goals. So we decided to engage in a research project to see if we could make a tool available that would provide that type of information. So the EAB engaged the help of a Master's of Environmental Management student at Duke University to research what other cities across the United States have done to support elected officials in decision-making to achieve environmental goals. The result of that research is a Durham-specific sustainable decision-making tool that I'm going to be presenting to you today. And also to the Board of County Commissioners work session on November 4th. So we're bringing this to you today to get your feedback on content and implementation of a tool like this, as well as to ask staff for their feedback on content and implementation of a tool like this. And we'll be asking the same of the county commissioners on November 4th. Our goal here is a city-county-wide tool that would be attached to your agenda memos and provide the information at your fingertips when you are making decisions about all types of policies and actions, not necessarily just land use decisions. So to reiterate, the purpose of this sustainable decision-making framework or tool is to support the elected officials, all of you, in evaluating the environmental implications of a proposed action, policy, or any project, and to ensure that those decisions align with and help the city's sustainability goals that have already been outlined. Durham is amazing. We have tons of environmental goals and sustainability action plans already in place. This tool aligns with existing plans and goals and would support the elected officials in evaluating the environmental implications of any action, policy, or project, then how that aligns with those existing plans and goals. So I'm reiterating that just to make super clear, the Environmental Affairs Board in this tool is not providing or proposing any new goals for the city of Durham. We are simply making a tool so that you would know whether or not a particular action or policy, how well or it does or does not align with our existing sustainability goals and environmental goals. So how did we make the tool? We did a lot of research. We assessed dozens of cities. We found them by looking at scores for sustainable cities, cities that Durham might like to be like, and then filtered based on region, city size, and resources available. So for example, we actually looked at which cities have part-time versus full-time city council to make sure that we were proposing a tool that would be reasonable for part-time elected officials to be able to use. So we did a wide scan of many cities and then found ones that had tools similar to what we were proposing, and then narrowed that down to 30 cities. And we looked in depth at the specific tools used by 30 different cities and then categorized them based on the different types of tools. So I'm just going to give you some examples of the types of tools we found in other cities. There's 3 categories that those tools typically fell into. Either a sustainability or equity checklist. This type of tool most aligned with the type of structure that would likely be useful given the way that Durham has structured our plans and goals. They tend to be more succinct. They tend to focus on similar topics that we like to focus on, things like environmental justice or greenhouse gas emissions. The second type of tool was a land use criteria tool. These are intended only to be used to evaluate city planning or development projects. This is very much narrower in focus than what we were proposing for Durham because we One is something that could be used for any type of decision, not just land use decisions, although in addition to land use decisions. In addition, our planning commission already has environmental impact criteria that they look at for the decisions that they make. So we did not feel the need to duplicate their efforts. And then lastly, sustainable plan addendums. These tools were usually used as addendums to city or county's overall sustainability plans. They were usually used as general guiding principles or guiding questions that policymakers should consider, but they weren't necessarily used or created in a way that, they were often created in a way such that the policymaker was intended to answer the question themselves versus having somebody with the technical expertise answer it for the elected official and then present that information in front of them. And that's what we were trying to do, is provide you not so much with questions to answer, but actually the information that answered those questions that you might want answered for you. So finally, this is where my presentation is going to end and where I'd like the questions and comments and feedback to begin. So this is the tool itself. There is a longer report that explains in much more detail how each question was developed, which cities they were based on, some more nuanced about the question wording. And so happy to provide some more detailed answers if that's requested. But just to summarize, we are proposing that this tool would be used in such a way that these questions would be answered for the policies, actions, and projects that you are deciding on, so that when you see them in your agenda memo, these questions are answered for you, and then you can make a decision based on those answers. So question number one would be, does this action increase or decrease greenhouse gas emissions now or in the future? This aligns with our comp plan as well as our carbon neutrality and renewable energy plans. This question would be answered something like, this might increase it by X amount now, but overall, over the next 20 years, it's going to decrease it, and here's why. That might be the kind of nuance that this questioning gets to. Question number two is, who benefits from this action and who is disproportionately impacted, and will this action further entrench any existing unjust environmental issues or systems? This one's hard to give an example, but without reading page 94 of our comp plan, but our page 94 of our comp plan has a really robust definition for Durham for environmental justice. So we expect the answer to this would respond directly to that definition. Question number three is how a more overall summary of environmental impacts for water quality, air quality, heat islands, flooding, habitat fragmentation, and biodiversity, just to make sure that we are not being using only one lens when we're evaluating environmental impacts. This is obviously about more than just greenhouse gas emissions. And frankly, a lot of the decisions made at the local level have much more to do with these things. So we wanted to make sure that these were answered. And then lastly, would the actions impact any ecologically sensitive or valuable natural areas or land adjacent to those areas? And again, this is directly referencing a specific definition in the comprehensive plan as well. So to summarize, happy to answer questions about this. Some detail about how these questions are defined is taken directly from the comp plan. So we made sure not to provide any new definitions or new ways of interpreting anything. These would be directly referenced in the comprehensive plan. And we would propose this tool is used in your as a decision-making tool for you as well as the county commissioners. And so our request here, just to reiterate, is any comments or feedback from you about this, as well as a direction from staff to provide us with more detailed feedback on content and implementation. And we'll be taking all of that feedback from City Council, staff, as well as county commissioners, and then revising the tools based on that, and then providing it back to you as a more final format. Thank you.
Have at it.
Thank you so much for this presentation. And also, I just want to appreciate how much work has gone into this and the intentionality with which y'all looked at all of these other cities and chose ones that fit with Durham. I appreciate the idea that we work part-time. I don't feel like I put way more hours than a part-time worker into this job, but I do appreciate that, all that work that went into that. I think that the question that seems to be on everybody's mind when I hear about this tool and its use is, is how it is actually going to happen, who's going to be doing the assessment, and what is the impact going to be on staff. And so I know you've talked to staff a little bit about this so far, and I know you are looking for feedback as well, but I'm wondering if you could just speak a little bit to who's going to use this tool, how does it get into our packet, what resources are we going to expend as the city? Not to say one way or the other that it's not useful, but just want to make sure that we have an understanding of that impact on our.
Yeah, absolutely. I figured that's the number one question, right? So I'll answer this in a couple ways. One is, so this is not the first time, this may be the first time it's presented to this particular staff that's in this room, but we presented it to the EAB first and got our liaison feedback initially. That was back in May. And so we incorporated some of that feedback into this version that you see today. So the EAB specific liaisons have already seen this as well. In general, we got a positive response with the understanding that there would need to be some refinements or some thinking through about how to actually implement. So when we proposed this and out of that EAB meeting, we saw it kind of being implemented in one of two ways, and there's probably more ways that we're not thinking of. This is, again, why we're looking for ideas. One would be in the same way that staff provide research or any context or background information that you all request on any agenda item when it's presented to you. So one way this might be used is that you request this information is provided to you on your agendas so that you can see it when you prepare for your decisions. This is like right in front of you, and that would be prepared by staff. We have wonderful staff who have a lot of technical expertise in a lot of these areas, and which we know because a lot of those staff are our liaisons to the Environmental Affairs Board. So one option would be the staff provides the background information for this. Another option would be the Environmental Affairs Board provides the background information for this. That's something the EAB would be very happy to take on if provided that opportunity to do this research. We have, it's earlier in my slides, but we have technical experts on all of these areas on the Environmental Affairs Board, and we have access to a wide network of technical experts just based on our professional backgrounds to be able to answer any questions we wouldn't know. So we would be happy to help assist either council or assist staff and have it be a collaborative project to be able to answer some of these things, especially some of the more technical ones as it relates to like getting really into like air quality or getting really into biodiversity or something. That's what we would propose is having staff provide that background context. And if it's something the staff doesn't feel is possible, having the EAB supplement that staff or just having the EAB do it, I think is another option. Again, we do have the technical expertise to answer these questions and enough familiarity with the comprehensive plan to answer it for the comprehensive plan. Our goal here is so that we don't have a comp plan and then you're making decisions and there's no connection between the decisions and the comp plan, right? We are just giving you questions that help you say yes or no. Is this aligned with the comp plan? That's basically the point of this. Is this aligned with the environmental part of the comprehensive plan?
Have you had conversations with staff already?
We have, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
We have not had, I haven't had one-on-one conversations with staff. We've had conversations with the staff as a group at that EAB meeting. That would be my next step is I would love to have one-on-one conversations with staff to get their direct feedback on it.
First of all, I just want to say thank you. I think this is exactly the kind of work that we hope for from our boards and commissions is residents who are joining, who are excited, who want to step up and be proactive and do the work of the commission. And I think that's exactly what you're doing, what this is. And I'm also just impressed, having looked at the report, with the thoroughness and professionalism of the report. So I appreciate that. I appreciate the questions posed by Councilmember Cook. One question I have is, I'm very protective of sort of staff time. So I definitely want, you have staff liaison. And I'm also liaison to EAB, having those conversations with staff to make sure that we're not loading up staff time. And then where we would be loading up staff time, EAB taking the lead on reviewing what it is. So one thing here is, how would you select what the EAB would take a look at? Would there be criteria? What are your initial thoughts on how you would prioritize what you're actually taking a look at, assuming you can't take a look at everything or evaluate everything? And then also kind of what you see as next steps, you know, are you going to do a test case or, you know, what can we imagine would come out of this process, you know, in the next several months?
Yeah, so I like the idea of you all providing us with a test case. That would be actually really a great idea, saying like this decision is coming up. Let's use this tool for that and see how it goes. That would be the best way for us to refine it based on real world examples. In terms of which decisions, I think that is one of the next steps. And that's why I want to have those conversations with staff and with you all. If you have specific ideas about scoping it, what kinds of decisions this should be relevant to. Obviously, in an ideal world with all the time in the world, we could get these kind of questions answered for everything that you all are deciding on, right? But I want to make sure that we are scoping it appropriately. So that my answer to that is first, I'd like to ask some of the key staff departments, like I'm thinking stormwater, for example, and planning department both come to mind as ones that I would want to ask them, which of these answers do they feel like they have staff already on hand that could answer those questions versus which ones would they want the EAB to support? I will say when we researched the other cities for this, and Barrett, please correct me if I'm wrong, but for the most part, the staff were answering these questions. And that's also partly why we based this on existing research, is because we didn't want to come up with something that was completely unreasonable to ask staff to do. But based on our research, the tools are created in such a way that the staff do answer it, right? Yeah. So these are based on cities where the staff is answering these questions for the councils or the county commissioners. So we expect that our staff is can do that. Obviously, every city has different capacities. So without trying to sound like I'm giving you the runaround, I want to ask staff first which types of decisions or policies or maybe even just types of questions they'd like to take on first versus want EAB support. And if we want the EAB support for all of the technical areas like A through G, that's fine. I'm sure we have plenty of staff that can answer question 1, for example. We have sustainability departments that I know can answer that.
My mic's not on. So the presentation, I think the presentation showed up as the report in our packet. We didn't get what you have in front of you. So if
Yeah,
we could
I'm
get
happy
that,
to send this to you as well.
yes, please
Okay.
send it. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I have lots. First of all, I'd love to know if you actually called any of the elected official offices to find out if they're actually using the tool. I don't think Chicago is a part-time council system. I think it's full-time. Any strong mayor system is going to have a full-time council that kind of tracks. So I'd love to know if there's been any conversation with actual electeds and if they're using the tool or if they're just requiring staff to do a lot of extra work and it's not actually impacting their decision-making.
Yeah,
I would love to know, I have a lot of questions. Would love to know,
Okay.
I would write them all down because this is what's going to happen with me. Anyway, would love to know, so on average, we have 20 to 40 agenda items, contracts, not just the memos, is the plan. Have folks thought through, have folks had conversations around the agenda cycle? So even if we move forward on this, understanding our agenda cycles, when you would have to be able to provide staff insight, would the tool be used for every agenda item? And I know you're saying test case, would it, what's the scope? That hasn't been answered. I know you want to talk to staff, but I would have appreciated a little bit more understanding the scope on how you would use this tool. I think additionally, let me see, I'm looking this up right now, sorry. With some of the questions, I think in the case of like the comp plan, we're already answering all these questions with like, how is it aligning? On our zoning cases, there's I think it's one of our last attachments that puts that case with whatever measure, whatever policy it's supposed to line up. And it's saying if the policy is met or not met. So I'm trying to understand what the difference would be with this tool. And I think the other question that I have is a lot of the things, and I guess this is where the scope comes into play, you know, there isn't a sustainability piece to it. It's a contract, or it's a contract for heavy fleet equipment.
Mhm.
There is no alternative for that equipment. It is,
Right.
right? So I guess those are the questions, is like,
Sure.
how do we not make the tool not become a cumbersome thing?
Absolutely. And that's the kind of feedback that we want. So to answer them in no particular order. To use your example of the heavy fleet, I want to be clear that scoring low on a tool like this doesn't mean you necessarily say no. It's about information so that you can make an appropriate decision. It may be that this is the only thing available, and because of what we need as a city, we still have to buy that heavy fleet equipment. Great. We go in knowing what the environmental impacts of those are, so that we can make a more informed decision. I just want to be clear that this is not like a yes, no type of thing. It's an information providing type of tool, because there may be trade-offs that we want to make, and that's useful for us. We may need to cut down some trees to build a house. That may be a trade-off that we want to make, or it may be a trade-off that we don't want to make, depending on, you know, what kind of information is provided. So just want to be clear about that. To your first question, I think it's a great next step and a great suggestion to call some of the city councilors involved. What we did do is we only used tools that we found were actively in use based on agendas. So these were ones that we found on agendas actively in use. That's how we evaluated whether or not they were being used or not. I think the qualitative evaluation of calling city councilors and asking how they feel about it is also a good suggestion. So thank you for that one, council member. Regarding your question about scoping the types of decisions, that's actually the kind of feedback I'm asking of you, is what type of decision should this be required for? What type of a decision does this make sense for? What we don't want is only think about sustainability or environmental impacts when it's a sustainability type decision. The point is to be able to evaluate environmental impacts for all types of decisions, because many of them have environmental impacts, whether or not we consider them like sustainable stuff. But to your question about the type of scoping, we are going to be asking staff that, but I also want feedback from you as council about what kinds of decisions it makes the most sense for you to have this kind of information about. So that's why we didn't come in here with already having it scoped to the type of questions. We wanted to get that information from you so that we can then scope it.
Thank you. I have more. So looking at the sustainability principles, they're very broad, and I understand there's kind of sub bullets underneath.
Are you looking at the comprehensive plan, you mean? Or where are you looking?
Hold on, it's page, and remember, we don't have this is just the report. So it's on page 6 of the framework, and I think it's a tool from California.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is just an example of their tool. I'm just curious, you know, what is the context? Because what we run into in North Carolina is consistently like, the city can do what it wants. We can do whatever we want for the most part, obviously. We can mandate affordable housing. We can mandate that our thing has to use solar power or some kind of other, you know, green, whatever sustainable thing. But we can't mandate that. I mean, this is what we ran into. And EAB was, you know, extremely involved in our carbon neutrality plan from, you know, several years ago. We certainly used your expertise on that. But what becomes clear in North Carolina is that we don't have local power to demand any of those things broadly. We kind of use the bully pulpit. So, you know, we can't have a living wage ordinance for the city. What we can do is pay our workers as the best that we can and hope that that creates pressure in the market more broadly. So would a tool like this just really be for internal purposes, because we can't mandate it for external purposes?
I'm not sure I totally understand the question, so I'm going to respond, but then I may be missing the mark. So the example that you provided, is the proposal consistent with the sustainability principles? That is the purpose there is to answer kind of the same questions here. It's like, is the goal, is the policy, is the action consistent with XYZ policy? Rather than just asking that question broadly, this breaks down, that pulls out the specific parts of the policy that it might need to be consistent to if we are talking about environmental impacts, and just makes it more specific. It's not necessarily mandating yes or no whether or not we pass the policy or not pass the policy because of the answer to that question.
I guess what I'm saying is that most of this decision can only affect what we do as a city with our own internal work. It cannot affect what we do externally, because we don't have the power to do that in most cases. Does that make sense? Like, we can say we can use this tool internally
Yeah.
if it moves forward,
Mhm.
right? You could get all the feedback you want from it for
Mhm.
agenda items. You could decide what the scope is. Certain
Right.
agenda items don't fit, right?
Mhm.
Like, we're going to fund whatever nonprofit doing whatever work. But that is all internally focused. It's only going to do what the carbon neutrality plan already does, because all of our carbon neutrality, like, that plan is for city work.
Yeah, yeah, uh-huh.
It's not for anything that we can do externally.
But
And
the
so I
comprehensive
guess
plan is not.
comprehensive plan is a plan. It is
Right.
not local ordinance. There's no, that's why we can suggest you meet the policy, but there's no enforcement mechanism around it. So it's just, are we just overcomplicating a thing? Because we don't have any real power to push on the envelope other than the policy, the power of persuasion, like, hey, we're doing this thing internally.
Mhm.
Other folks should try and do it, but we can't tell you to do it.
But isn't it useful to understand whether or not an action is or is not aligned with the comprehensive plan?
It is helpful, but I'm already saying I have a tool that tells me that. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Councilmember Rist.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. Well, thank you for coming, Jennifer. It's always good to see you. It's good to have the Environmental Affairs Board in the house. And
Mhm.
Barrett, thanks for your good work on this. A lot of deep research there. I guess, maybe I want to pick up on that. I think where you're going. I think there's a lot of questions about, like, some of the nuts and bolts, how this would be
Yeah.
executed and implemented. That's clear. Staff, who's going to do it? EIB staff, what's the scope?
Mhm.
But I guess what I'm wrestling with is, like, what's the on a larger,
Mhm.
higher level, like, what are we trying to solve for here with
Mhm.
this tool? Like, what's missing with this tool? Because my colleague is right. We have a lot of details, certainly in our packet for land use cases,
Mhm.
on a range of environmental impacts that relate to specific criteria in the UDO, right? So we have that. So
Mhm.
like what's, and I know, for example, the city of Providence has like a sustainability evaluation tool. We don't have like a detailed environmental impact tool for everything we do in Durham, certainly don't.
Right.
So, like, yeah, what is, like, on a high level, what are we solving for here?
Yeah, so what we're solving for, I think from the Environmental Affairs Board's perspective, is that we have great plans and great goals in Durham, but we don't necessarily have a way to evaluate whether the decisions we make decision by decision are achieving or reaching towards those goals or actively pushing us away from those goals. And that's really what we're trying to do, is put the information in front of the people who we think need it, because it's not us. We're not the ones making the decision by decision. That's the elected officials, and the staff support those decisions by providing that background context as well. We want to be able to connect the dot from each decision to the goals that have already been created. And so that's why we tried to distill down into a short format rather than we can't do an environmental impact assessment for every single decision, right? Obviously, an environmental impact assessment is for like really, really large infrastructure projects or something where it's really huge and there is a lot of detail to that. You could think of it as like a teeny tiny environmental impact snapshot for different things that don't otherwise have a tool available to provide that information. Mm-hmm. Right. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and bringing some of those plans together in one format, because you do think about the carbon neutrality plan, for example, and if there's a particular decision that has to do with carbon neutrality, obviously then the answer is, well, does it or does it not meet a carbon neutrality plan? But there are many, many decisions that affect our ability to achieve carbon neutrality that have nothing on the surface to do with carbon, for example. And that's really what we're trying to achieve here. And another example is something like flooding or heat islands, for example. You may have decisions that come across your desk that are like really directly related to flooding or heat islands. But there's also a very large number of things that you're deciding on that are not directly related to that, but do impact those things. And so that's what we're trying to solve for, is that these are multifaceted issues. And so keeping that information in front of you so that we can see whether or not we're moving towards our goals or away from them.
The other thing that in terms of, sorry about that. Yeah, thank you, Nathan. So when you were describing earlier the sort of like the scoring process,
Mhm.
so this tool won't say like do, don't do.
Correct.
So it's one more input that we
Correct.
have as part of the packet of things we're gonna get. This is not a sort of designed to be determinative. It just sort of like
Correct.
it's just more information.
Absolutely, yes, correct. And to Councilmember Caballlo's point, this, I just want to reiterate, this is not telling council to vote for or against something. Obviously, I, as an Environmental Affairs Board Chair, might say that, but as the tool itself is not telling you to do something or not to do something, it is helping you putting the information of whether or not this is in line with existingly agreed upon plans and goals that Durham already has for the environment. Mhm. And I do also want, from the implementation standpoint, the complexity of that, if there are existing tools or parts of frameworks that this could be integrated with rather than being separate, if there's existing tools that you think are already achieving this, that is the kind of feedback that we want.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, colleagues, for a great discussion. Thank you. Good to see you all, and thanks for the work that the EAB does for us. It's a tool, and we know that tools aren't self-deploying. They are picked up. Sometimes you need to pick up a hammer. Sometimes you need to pick up a screwdriver, depending upon the job that's before you. And I really appreciate my colleagues leaning in on this and bringing up some important points. But for me, as a policymaker, decision maker, for example, this question: Will this action impact ecologically sensitive or valuable natural areas or land adjacent to those areas? Let's say the answer is yes.
Okay.
The tool stops there, and policymakers have to determine now. So what? How much is the impact worth? What is the nature of the impact? And that can't take the place of policymakers. So I just want to stress that it's valuable as a tool.
Correct.
And many of these questions, this is kind of if I can use a jazz metaphor, kind of riffing off of what we ask in racial equity. It's the same type of questions applied to the environment. But we've known for generations, one tool is when people say, ouch. I mean, there have been communities that have been railing about impact, and we know that they were hurting long before these tools were employed. So these are good questions for leaders to ask.
Yes.
When they're making decisions, whether they're codified or not, who's getting impacted. But at the end of the day, what this tool cannot answer is how much we think that impact is worth, how much we're willing to take. And Councilmember Cook, thank you for inviting them to be with us today. I appreciate you're having them here. And no, we can't take the play. We may have a council that's elected one day, hopefully not in Durham, that doesn't believe in climate change and they don't care about, drill baby drill. It's just but I think this council is not that council. So the tool is useful to me in terms of more information, but as it's already been said, it cannot take the place of a value judgment on the part of a leader, or what we can do or what we should or should not do. The very word mitigation itself implies that we are going to be an active, engaged. There's nothing we humans do that don't have an impact. The question is it worth it? Do we think the impact is too felt indiscriminately by one community as opposed to another, or should we or shouldn't we do it? Those are questions that the tools can't take our place. We have to as leaders. So I take it for what it's worth. I want to know what's happening, obviously, to our water and our air. But the assumption is that as humans, we are going to continue to be humaning. And that is a constant conversation on where is the line between, our humaning and impacting where we live. And that's ongoing. And a tool can't answer the question for us, but I'm very grateful for the tool, and I hope that conscientious leaders will be asking themselves these questions anyway as they approach decisions, whether it's codified or not. So thank you. Good to see you all, and I appreciate the work.
Yeah, thank you for the comment. And I want to just pull out some key points there that appreciate you pointing them out. This tool does not take the place of policymaker discretion. Thank you for making that really explicit. This is information in front of you to then use your discretion of how you would like to make that decision. That is the purpose of a policymaker. So thank you for making that point, I think, more clearly than I was making it. I think some of these are the things that we know you all are asking yourselves a lot because we elected you to think about these questions, right? What we are trying to do is then say, we don't expect council members to necessarily have some of the deep dive information about some of these issues. So if helpful, providing some of that more technical information in front of you that you may or may not be able to answer for yourself would help you with that discretion. The other point you made that I think was quite important is, you know, the part about ecologically sensitive or valuable natural areas. If the answer is yes, should that be does that mean the conversation stops? Not necessarily. Maybe the answer is, you know what, it's still worth it because XYZ reasons, but now we're really thinking about it. Like, yes, it's still worth it to do it. Or, well, maybe not. You know what, if we changed this part of it, it would no longer impact that area. But now we know because we've answered the question and now we know we can move it over here and it won't impact that area. Or who benefits from the action, who's disproportionately impacted. Maybe it's still worth it, but now we know who we need to talk to because we've really thought about who it's impacting and now we know the kind of community engagement we need. So it's to provide you with information that provides you with the discretion needed, but potentially also the ability to adjust the decision or make different actions after that because you know now it's going to impact things in a little bit differently than expected.
So I'll pass it over afterward. I think most of my my interests or concern was shared. We have a very competent staff.
Absolutely.
Very competent
Absolutely.
staff. And I think what happens, first of all, I think this is a great tool. But as I'm listening to it, I'm getting tired. And I feel like I'm getting tired because I'm like, wait a minute, gosh, you know, it seems like it's adding another step, you know? And I get it, but I think what happens is we have one thing that's unique about Durham that I think we do better than other places is we have so many folks from the community that are engaged. And we have a much more active council as well. But sometimes in that process, we overlook the actual people who are operationalizing these things. And I think that we miss that point. Because right now, the EAB, you all as a board have come up with an idea and you're coming to policymakers. And I guess the next step is policymakers direct the staff on what to do without considering, well,
direct the staff to give us feedback so we can adjust it, not just implement it. Yeah.
Right, I think from my perspective, I would love to have our boards, committees, and commissions, you know, advise. I think, I think you guys are advising, but this is something that would be operational. Whereas I would love to see more positional approaches rather than we need you now to do this. Because that, that's the manager's job and staff's job, you know, and when it comes to planning, you know, there's such a significant process that they go through before it even gets to us. And it takes forever, you know, and I think what we're doing is we're you know, with good intent, we're densifying the bureaucracy even more. That's what it feels like. And I think that's why I'm getting a little tired. So we have to find this delicate balance of how do we do something that has good intentions without it being just additional work, you know? And so I can appreciate the openness of wanting to get feedback. But at the same time, I think that, you know, it would be great if I could hear like, okay, the city is functioning in this way when it comes to whatever decisions we're making. Let's say development, you know, when zoning requests are coming to us. Here is EAB's position on this, and this is what we think should be addressed. I would appreciate that even more rather than, hey, staff, I think you should function in this way. And there was we had some of this conversation around the NACTO standards. And that's why we had to make some of those adjustments, you know, moving it from like, staff, you will do this and this only now. Something else I appreciate is it's really simple. You know, when applicants are coming to us, they're just giving us a score on the comp plan. You know, the comp standards, like it meets X amount out of the however many standards. Yeah. And it's that simple, you know, and they're sort of doing that and staff just verifies it. So I think this is really good. I think it means well, but I think it's so much more complex than just, you know, hey, here's a new tool we think you guys should use.
Right.
More so, I think it's, you know, staff, here's something we'd like you to consider, which I think you are going to do that part of the process.
Right.
Right.
It's also to respond to Councilwoman Caballero's point, we don't want to propose something that staff does if it's not helpful to the people that are ultimately going to use it, which is why our strategy was to first start with the decision makers. Is this kind of information in front of you helpful? If it's not, there's no reason for me to talk to staff about doing, at least that was our thought process. There, we could have gone the other way around as well. I just want to explain that was our reasoning for coming to
Gotcha.
council first. Is this information in front of you helpful? If yes, let's figure out a way to make that possible. Is it that staff does it? Is it that EAB provides it to you? In our research, a lot of the times the staff were doing it, but we have a very engaged citizen group that could do it too. So that's kind of our reasoning to coming to the decision makers first.
Yeah, gotcha. My preference will be the other way first, because again, I sell chicken for a living, right? And so I rely on staff to provide this package of information. And so I read that report, I go through all of those things, and I know that it's been properly vetted. And, in due time, the EAB board is going to look very different, and so the electeds or decision makers, as we say, I would say policymakers, we come and go, but staff, the institution is here. So I think that's where you should start, because that's where the foundation is going to be.
Yeah. That's great feedback. I just wanted to explain why we came to you first. I think that's also valuable to do the other way around.
And it's Durham.
Yeah.
It's Durham. I understand the nature. We flex above what we actually can do in Durham. So I get it. I wish I was as powerful as folks think I am, but go ahead.
Thank you. So I have a suggestion, if folks are open to it. I would love to see a test case with staff input, and I would love for staff to be honest about extra work.
Absolutely, yes.
As a next step. And I just want to push back a little bit. I mean, I appreciate this. EAB has always been a very active. I mean, I was the liaison for many years.
Yes, you are.
Always been a very active board. And we always appreciate that involvement. I do want to push back a little bit. When you ask us questions around, I can't remember, it was, what community has been impacted and things like that. I will say to think that the folks in these seats and that staff don't already think that way, especially when we think about equity and how we do it in this city, it becomes, I will say, at least on my ears, it lands like all of the work that staff and electeds here currently and before, either residents aren't absorbing the work that's been done, or they don't believe the work that's been done. And so then how do we need to communicate more effectively? But as a decision maker who's been here for many years watching these shifts happen, our CIP has an equity tool involved. Our budget has an equity tool involved. So many of our decisions already incorporate this. Maybe you don't see a separate tool. It's kind of like when you approach language access. Sometimes people add language access as the end. Oh, we got to get this translated. We got to get this interpreted. If you're doing language access appropriately, it's embedded in all of the work.
Right.
It's not a separate tool. If you're doing equity appropriately, it's not a separate tool. There's no equity tool. If you're doing it the right way, it's just the culture. Everyone has absorbed the lesson, and it's how everyone is oriented to the work. And I really want to lift up staff specifically on the equity piece around it, because to share or think that the city of Durham and almost every single staff member who works for this organization hasn't done that work, that we haven't fundamentally shifted how we do business, and that it took a lot of effort. It took money. It took changing really hard, changing a culture in an organization. I will say that I am slightly offended, because it means that either we're not communicating it effectively or folks aren't believing what we're saying. I will say that staff consistently get asked to go to communities all over the place to share how we're doing it. And additionally, so many communities 3 or 4 years ago, so many cities, so many governments 3 or 4 years ago, who were screaming equity at the top of their lungs, they've abandoned it. They don't do it anymore. The minute it wasn't trendy, the minute it was going to be hard, the minute it was going to cost them something, they stopped doing it. So I will say that that is not how we've done it here. And I hope that residents who are listening, I can honestly say We do it differently in Durham, and it is an embedded part of how we do everything. It doesn't need to be a separate tool because it's how we've shifted the culture. And I'm not saying we can't improve, but at least with that piece, I want to really emphasize how critical it is for folks to understand how fundamentally different decisions are made today than they were in 2018.
Thank you. I think that's good feedback for me as a presenter, because I think we wanted to include question 2 about the disproportionate impacts because we felt it would be incomplete to have an environmental tool that did not talk about environmental justice, not because we think that there's a problem with decision making about that now. Again, I want to reiterate, a lot of these decisions and things you all are already thinking about, we are trying to put it together to you in a digestible format. I've lived in Durham for, what year is it? Almost 15 years. I've seen tremendous strides in the equity work and environmental justice work in Durham. So I want to acknowledge what you're saying, Councilmember Caballero, and apologize if the way that I presented that information was saying that the EAB does not think that is what you are already doing. We put this in here for completeness, not because we think it needs to be called out special. We have a whole section in the comprehensive plan about environmental justice to the credit of the point that it's really elevated, which is why it's part of this tool, not because we think it needs to be put in front of your faces because you've never thought about it before this moment.
I'll be brief. As Mayor Pro Tem said, I mean, it's a tool. We can look at it. As Councilmember Caballero said, let's do a test case. Let's see what it looks like. Is it helpful? Is it not? Does it need to be changed? Does it not? I think that's the next step. I think that'll be useful. And I appreciate the work that has gone into this and from the EAB. For me, if I could take all of this and summarize it, it's just taking existing policies and goals and doing a little bit of a deeper dive on sustainability. I think that's it. And so I look forward to whatever you guys come back with. As the EAB liaison, I will also be happy to, so that we don't have to, do this kind of presentation, come back and liaise, do my job, and bring the information between council and the EAB. So thank you for your work, Jen.
Thanks.
I'm going to just echo what my colleagues have said, and I want to say that I hear and agree with both what the Mayor Pro Tem and the Mayor were saying. For me, this tool, when I hear about it, it sounds like standardization, and that feels really, really useful for both transparency and also just for us as policymakers, because as you stated before, I do not have a background in this. So I am not able to assess everything that comes before me, and I'm not able, I cannot do it. I don't have the expertise. And we are doing this, I think, in all of these different departments. Like, we are weighing these things, and there, to Councilmember Caballero's point, there, in many of our departments, that some of these questions are the first questions that we ask. But we don't really have something that sort of standardizes across departments the impact. And I do think that that is uniquely useful for us as policymakers, because we can then actually look and see, are the things that are coming in front of us meeting these goals each and every time? Do we need to adjust our policies in the long run, not only for specific projects that we're approving, but like, do we need to actually like shift our policies moving forward for everything, right? I mean, and this is something that we won't be able to see unless we have the data. Y'all know that I love having data in front of me, but this is what we won't be able to see until we actually have that data in front of us. And it will be so much more useful if, instead of coming department by department by department, it's coming in a standardized way. And we're seeing that with our pilot program for Vision Zero. We're seeing the just how much we can accomplish when we like really have set plans and we're able to like have interdepartmental cohesiveness. Not that the departments don't work together anyway, but it's really easy if you have a set 5 questions to be able to work together that way, as opposed to having to like initiate some sort of work together. For me, it is a no-brainer if I feel like the idea of like who is going to do it, and do we have the capacity in our staff to do it, and is it going to burden, exactly what the Mayor was saying, is it going to burden people that with these things that we don't need to burden them with.
Right.
So for me, it's a no-brainer. The tool sounds great. I would love to have it. I would love to do a test case as well. That sounds great. I would also love to hear next time when we get sort of a presentation about how the test case went. I would love to hear from key staff on how that went in their departments as well. And if we need to do that in separate meetings too, I'm happy to sort of speak with people along the way to see how it's going. But for me, that is the biggest thing, which is like, can we do it timely? Can we do it in a way that like correctly utilizes the capacity that we already have in the city? Where is EAB going to plug in and how much? And is that going to be functional? I think the tool is a great idea.
Great.
Thanks.
For the type of test case, I think that's a great next step for us at the EAB. Thank you all for the suggestion. We'll work with our staff liaisons to kind of come up with a good test case. Unless you all have suggestions, please send them my way. If there's something in particular you want us to try it on, I'm also open to that.
Thank you. I'm going to add to it. If the council's pleasure is to do a test case, then I'm going to emphasize what Councilmember Caballero's comment was, is to be brutally honest. But I'm going to say blatantly, I don't want to test the case yet.
Oh, okay.
I prefer you all do it the appropriate way. That's go and work directly with staff.
Yeah.
I think when we are, I don't want to say outside, but when we are skipping over staff to get, to get information on something before even going to staff, for me, the reason I'm a little facetious when I say I sell chicken, right? But my point is trying to break it down to the simplest terms of, I've been on council 3 years now. I pretty much understand this stuff now. When I first got on, I used to look at these case reports and I would be so overwhelmed and I would be in the office till 2 a.m., trying to get it. But now I can, all right, let me
Now
take
it's
a
1
look at
a.m.
it for an hour. And it's like, all right, I get it, because you start to know what to look for. The reason why I'm much more equipped is because I have an entire staff that prepares these things for me. And I think that, when it comes to just making the city more robust in these ways, instead of skipping the experts and coming directly to policymakers, my first trade is music education. The second is selling chicken. And the reason why I've gotten really good at it is because I do have departments filled with experts. But I feel when we skip that part, and folks have a few great ideas and they come directly to us, what does it say, even in goodwill, what does it say to the folks that have gone to school, gotten degrees, and they're experts at these things? It's still a great idea, but there is a process in which we can follow. And I think it demoralizes, in a sense, the folks who are supposed to provide us, like, hey, we've worked with community members, we've worked with our boards, committees, and commissions. We have this new approach. We'd like you to consider it. I do think Durham has gotten so out of order that we get things all types of ways. So now, and that's not to you just today. You should have seen the last 2 years. There were times where we were about to add $18 million in the budget the night we were passing the budget. So you will hear me sort of have a bit more fidelity to process for the sake of longevity, sustainability of it. So that's what I'm thinking. If the council chooses to do a test subject, I don't want staff to, Manager Page, I don't want your staff to just approach it in trying to appease us as council members, but more so from their daily work, But I do trust, I don't know if you've ever met Sarah Young. She's one of the most smartest people I've ever met in my life.
Yeah.
Oh, she's here?
Yeah.
Oh, hey. When I call her,
Yeah.
literally every question or concern or anything she can answer. If she can't, she knows exactly who to give it to, direct me to. So I'm not ready to see a test subject yet. I'm ready to see you guys go and work with staff, work together on proposing something if there is a need to, and then bringing that for us to consider as policy. But I get a little uncomfortable when it comes to operationalizing something when staff is the afterthought. It's coming directly to us as policymakers. So that's just my personal perspective.
Thank you. And I apologize, when I said test case, I meant pick a thing and have that thing work with the appropriate staff.
Yeah, that's
not-
also what I meant, to be clear, was work with
I'm
staff.
saying the same thing.
Okay, yeah, I meant also work with staff, to be clear, yeah.
However you choose it,
Yeah.
whichever department or folks, and I know Manager Page will do an excellent job synthesizing all the things that were heard today, but that's what I meant, so thanks.
Yeah, go ahead.
To your point, Mr. Mayor, I think you're right. Like, it's not like the information is not out there. Excuse me. The information, like we call Ms. Young, right? We talk to Mr. Williams, we talk to the folks in water management. So like the information is there, right? And maybe it would be better, as my colleague Councilmember Cook said, to have like one tool what's all there in front of you. But the truth is the information is there, you know, and it's whether we go and get it, you know, or if there's a tool that sort of provides it in
Right.
front of us. But the information is out there, and including EAB and the residents. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the staff have, right, the staff can answer these questions because the staff are already providing this kind of complexity on a regular basis.
I'm sorry, you said the staff?
The staff can answer these questions.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. Again, thanks, colleagues. I'll just say very quickly, whatever the time lapse is between the staff doing their case study, we're free to ask ourselves these questions as well and make them part of our culture of inquiry as decision makers. I will say, and Councilmember Caballero's comments really hit home with me. But I will say that I think that re-rehearsing what we stand for and codifying it is really important. There are members of this community right now who think that some of us are at war with the environment today. There are communities who even today, despite our work with racial equity, think that there are disparities. They see some communities with protected bike lanes and others kids are jumping off bikes to hide from gunfire. I had a comment I was at lunch a couple of weeks ago and they said, oh, y'all gonna take care of the deer. What about my kids? Gunfire every night. So even today, there are folk, you know, you know, sometimes I think City Hall can be an echo chamber and we think we're doing a good job and we are, but in the real world, you know, there are folk who think that we are not addressing the issue. So I think re-rehearsing and trumpeting as often as we can that we're gonna be, you know, decisive and deliberate about keeping these things before us. We have a Voting Rights Act that was passed in 1965 in light of a constitution that had already guaranteed the right to vote. Why do we have to do that? Because, you know, people are jacked up and folk, humans be humaning. So I think it's not a bad thing for us to let the public know, even as they're calling us names and saying we're not into it, to continually rehearse and re-rehearse out loud who we are and what we stand for, because there are folk outside the City Hall who do not think their communities are getting equal treatment and that we're not championing racial equity even today, even with the work that we're doing. So yeah, again, thank you for the work. And while we're waiting on that test case, I'm gonna incorporate this into my decision-making matrix today and start asking these kind of questions. So thank you.
Thanks. Welcome to the deliberation of the Durham City Council. This is
Thank
how we
you.
do it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
The other thing is that I would also love to hear, I mean, we can also watch it, but I would love to hear also county's
Yeah, I'll let you
responses
know.
as well.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you.
And email that presentation. We didn't get that, what you had.
just directly to
let's-
council's email address?
Yeah,
Okay.
you have more information in yours than we had in ours.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
All right, thank you so much. ARPA update. All right. DCM Bertha Johnson Winbush. And Madam ARPA SAR Victoria Samayoa. Oh my gosh, I need to see it to say it. Samayoa. Cool.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Bertha Wimbush, Deputy City Manager for Operations. We are here to provide an update to you all on the ARPA funds. I have with me here today Victoria Samayoa, who is our program coordinator. As you all know, this program is managed by multiple departments. It came to us and there wasn't really a fit for it. And so we have the manager's office as well as our budget department. You have Christina and Andrew here today. Finance department, Tim Floor, our CFO. Our city attorney's office, I saw Carlos earlier, but he is a great support to us as well. And so we have a lot of cooks in the kitchen with this program. We came to you in August and we talked about where we are with the funds. And you all asked us to come back and share with you again in October. the funds that would be remaining that we may be able to reallocate, and you wanted us to come back to you in time to be able to do that reallocation if necessary. So as a reminder, the approved projects here, the categories that were selected by our community through community engagement. And you've seen this chart several times. We just updated the obligated to date amount and also the spent to date amount. So here again are the projects that were approved by City Council. You approved 34 projects. The organizations are listed here. 3 of the organizations withdrew from the process, and we reallocated those funds to the affordable housing projects. And so just to remind you of the projects that you approved. So here's our reconciliation. You saw this slide the last time we presented. We have actually moved some of the projects. If you look at the approved proposals about the third line and the second grouping, that number was a larger number when you saw this before because we included some of the projects. I think El Centro was the one we included in that. We pulled that out and put that in other projects so that the 19.05 million matches the number that council approved. So we had moved that in that category. Still the same numbers, except for what we've updated. And again, that project is now in other projects. So let's talk about the remaining funds. We have $249,000 remaining. What I asked before the presentation is I asked the finance staff to make sure that first of all, we could cover the salaries of the employees that we have working in the program. As you all know, we gave pay increases in July. We also, when we initially planned on the staff, we planned for 3 staff members. That was before the U.S. Treasury final rules where we saw all the compliance work that had to be done. And so we added an additional staff person for the program. We also bought software, some other things that were not in the original budget. We now know, based on when we are actually completing the contracts, that some of them will come, the last payments will come at the very end, and we know compliance work still has to occur after that. We also didn't anticipate taking on the additional funds from the county, the affordable housing dollars that have to be managed by the staff. And so the additional costs, really, the projections are vastly different from what we projected from the beginning. What we recommend, one option, the staff, we're going to fund salaries, obviously, of the staff who are currently employed by the city. One option is to retain these funds in the program to cover those salaries, so that as we continue to earn interest on the dollars that are still in the bank, we would apply those dollars to the staffing so that we don't have to find an additional funds to support the staff. So that is our recommendation for today. We are happy to take any questions. I think we just had, that was the last slide, very short presentation.
All right, thank you so much. Colleagues, any comments? Councilmember Cook? Okay, Baker.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you all. This was a lot of work, and I know that the way that we approached it was different than many other communities. We did give, when the money first initially got announced and we realized what a transformative moment it was. I remember Manager Page at the time was like, we're going to try and get, a large amount back in community. And that's exactly what we did. So the fact that we are, we have like a little bit less than $250,000 obligated, right? That was a huge undertaking. And so I just want to say thank you to everyone. I know that to get some of these organizations up to the place that they needed to be to basically contract with federal dollars was a huge lift, and that there had to be a lot of conversations with those organizations so that they could accept the dollars, right? So I know that there was a ton of work that went into this. And I also want to say that many of our affordable housing projects, had we not had those ARPA dollars, they would not be getting built. That's how much more expensive we've seen, construction costs. So I'm really happy that, between the city and the county, pretty much anything extra that we had, we put towards affordable housing so that we could build many of the things that are coming online or will be in the next few years. So that's all I have. Thank you.
I want to echo those comments. I mean, first of all, thank you, staff. We had a presentation, a couple months ago, and we said, come back, we're going to make sure we're using all the money. So thanks you for all the work you've done. This is transformative investments in our community, right? And around the country. The stimulus has been a big way that we sort of rebuilt from the depths of COVID. So we're a part of this. Every community in America is part of this. So thank you to the administration for these dollars, to you all for like using it wisely and putting the dollars on the ground, people and projects. I would say, I know it's not a huge amount of money, but I would love to see both for the impact on our community, but also for the optics in our community. To me, like putting it back, I mean, we're going to cover the staff costs anyway, right?
That is correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I would say I'd love to see this money actually used again for people in the community or like in the ground of the community somehow, that we're continuing to impact, because it is one-time dollars. So that'd be my preference. So.
All right, I'm along the same vein. I have reached out to a couple of you all. I know that we're going to cover the staff anyway. I think today was a prime example of how we prioritize the care of staff. I think this is an opportunity, though, where we take a little bit of money and make a really big difference. Colleagues, I'm going to throw this out there. If you think about our community, you think about the kindergartners that we have now. They were born during the pandemic, in the heat of it. I think this is an opportunity to do something quite significant. I would love to use this to make one more big jab in the way Durham has done things in the past. And I'd love to use these funds to do something external, such as maybe college bonds for every kindergartner in this city of Durham, in the entire school system. I think there's an opportunity for us to have this as seed money and make it available to be matched. I know that we have to expend this money by December, but I think that I think it's something that can be done. So some of us have been talking about it. This kind of came up right at the last minute, so that's why we're kind of bringing it up now. I would love to hear what you all think about that. If you have some ideas, throw it out there.
I'm happy to jump in. Yeah, I'm happy to jump in and second that. As the mayor and I have been talking about this, and as the mayor knows and others may know, this is something I spent about 20 years working on. The idea of building wealth for all kids, starting even as early at birth or in kindergarten. It was so amazing to be in St. Paul on the intercity visit, to hear the mayor of St. Paul, Melvin Carter, talk about College Bound Baby in St. Paul. It's a program I can be so proud to say that I and my staff helped to design that for Mayor Carter back in the day. So I think this is a wonderful way to take one-time dollars and make a big investment in the next generation. So, and I'm happy to bring all the best expertise from around the country to help us do that in a quick way. So yeah, love it.
Well, this is a surprise to me, so that makes it
I will say,
difficult.
I tell Mayor Pro Tem everything before. I haven't even talked to him about this, so
Yeah.
this is.
Yeah, so I mean, and
Sorry about that.
And to be fair, the idea of a bond, I mean, it's an awesome idea. You're not going to hear anything else from me. I think it's great. To me, I'm just like, I understand seed funding, but I have a hard time without any preparation for this meeting, understanding the next steps that sort of go from there. This does seem like a pretty small amount of money in comparison to what we would need to fund every kindergartner. And also, I do appreciate that it's sort of a random group, but I also yeah, I would be curious to know how that was the group that was selected. And I heard what you said about COVID, but there were lots of folks that were impacted by COVID. So I actually thought you were going to say something different. So I was just taken aback by that. The other organization that I would like to point out that is doing really awesome work in our community and has been asking for about this amount of money, who does get contributions from every other local municipality except for the city of Durham, is El Futuro. And Councilmember Baker and the mayor and I had the opportunity to go on a tour there a few months ago, and they are providing some really, really needed mental health services in our community. This would be, I think, and also a nice place for this one-time donation to go, or donation, that's not the right word, but one-time movement of money. Sorry, my brain. This happens when you work a full day before you come here. So that would be another thing that I would just put out into the world. again, I'm not opposed to the bond, but I don't really know much about it. So
Yeah.
if you wanted to,
Yeah, let me just go a little deeper here. I did reach out to, and I was hesitant on mentioning it this way because I literally, when I was going through agenda review and I saw this, the first thing I did was I looked to see if it was already happening, and Latino credit union is doing something similar. So that's a segment of the population.
They're doing it with Book Harvest.
Book Harvest. Yeah. So the first thing I did was literally I called Wells Fargo and some of our corporate, just some of the folks that I've been engaged with corporately, and I said, hey, would you be willing to match this or help us meet a certain goal to cover all of the students, and just consider this 249 a seed investment into this initiative? And we're getting some pretty favorable responses on that. But time, Thursday got here before I can get some confirmation. So I consider we have it on the work session today. I'll more than likely ask for it to be on GBA before we kind of make any decisions on it anyway, just so I can get some more concrete information. But it's a presentation, I'm sorry, not even an item. However, I would need a little more time to get concrete on that, but depending on how much we can get from it, which is really loose right now, we could potentially do both. I met with Luke, Dr. Smith, after we went over there, and I know that they are looking for some stuff as well. So the thing is, we would have to expand this by December, and I have that in mind as well. But it's just an opportunity to do something huge. And this is like community-wide for, and the reason why I said kindergarten is because, yes, they were born in the heat of the pandemic. And I'm just thinking, what would happen 12 years from now if they had an account that would really help, give them a hand up from the disadvantages they were born in. And it obviously will be, a credit on the account, so.
is the idea for this to become a normal thing then that would happen? Can you tell me what the long-term vision would be?
Yeah, so as you know, we also launched the Bull City Future Fund, which will be an ongoing, account for the community to just holistically invest in, and that would be directly back into the youth of the city of Durham. And this is just another one of those initiatives that could support it.
Thank you. So traditionally, and Carl can speak, or Councilmember Riss can speak to this a lot more than I can, but the two times that these kinds of programs often kind of kick in is at birth or in the first year of public school. And that just happens to be because those are big milestones for kids. And so many of the other communities that have done similar things, that those are just the two kind of landing spots, at least the research that I've done around it. LCCU, Latino Credit Cooperative, has extensive experience in this. This is one of their kind of, in general, their approach to wealth building within communities that often struggle to wealth build. And so had a relationship with Book Harvest and have had this kind of vision for many years, just to name one institution in Durham that has pretty extensive knowledge on how these things run. But maybe Councilmember Rist has more.
Yeah, no, and as well, Durham Children's Initiative is also working with self-help on this. Actually, the mayor may know, Anthony Scott has also talked to Durham Housing Authority about doing this for all the kids in Durham Housing Authority properties. This is a growing movement. I mean, there's cities that we look to as peers, including St. Paul, but also San Francisco, New York City, LA, all do this for all kids every year. So this is a growing movement to address wealth inequality starting from the earliest levels, helping kids to begin to build wealth from birth. So to have some kind of wealth as you get to the college going process, to have some ability to have agency as you think about going to college or post-secondary. I can show you actually data. I was involved in San Francisco when they first launched a program there. There's great data that shows the impact of kids who've got an account way back in 2002 in kindergarten in San Francisco and what the difference has been in college going for them following because they've now sort of, some of them, those kids have graduated from college. So the impacts are profound. I can share that report with you. So it's well documented and something we'd be really proud in Durham to be able to do for our kids.
If you want to have a 5-hour conversation, throw out $250,000 and have an elected body have a conversation about it. Now I'm Also, it sounds like some conversations have been had. I agree with Councilmember Cook on some of her comments, and $250,000. There's a lot of different things that you can do with that. I would probably do something around homelessness or tackle food deserts. But I'm also not gonna go to war and destroy relationships if there's momentum in a certain direction. So I don't know, maybe there's a way of splitting up the funds if there are a couple ideas that are latching on here.
I will say, like I said, I talk to, usually when I go around and talk to each of you about whatever, the first person I speak to is Mayor Pro Tem. I haven't even got a chance to talk to him about it. The only person I talked to was Councilmember Risk, because he has experience in it. Because this literally came up, yesterday or Tuesday evening or whatever. So I was hoping that we could have some dialogue here today. Otherwise, it was just the recommendation that was coming from staff. And me personally, I thought about it. I was like, what could we do that would be like community-wide and quite significant? And while $249,000 is not enough to truly impact a lot, it makes it available to be matched and supported by so many other organizations that are ready to go right now. So this could easily turn into, millions, and so that's the idea behind it. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And what I'll just quickly say, nobody's going to come up with a bad idea for this money. I'm sure I can get behind everything, and I would, everything that's been said. I am intrigued by and when I visited with Book Harvest, I was really excited about the accounts for babies as they come. I remember when my mom took me to open up my Fat Cat account. They were called Fat Cat accounts back in, it was Dime. It was in Brooklyn. It was Dime Savings Bank back then. And every week I asked her, let me see my bank book. Let me check. I had like $2 or something. But I remember the feeling that I had from seeing that. If, with everything that's been said, it would include Latino children, Black children, white children, Asian children, children who are from housing distress situations. If we're talking about every child, then if we can reach the child of every idea that's been thrown out, that certainly would resonate with me, and particularly if we can get matching funds. So for whatever that's worth, that's something I'd be interested in pursuing.
It's about $25 to start the account.
Mm-hmm.
For each kindergarten in the city, which is about 2,000.
And if we're reaching kids from every type of household or demographic or strata in the city, that would be something that would resonate with me. So for whatever it's worth.
I'm going to push back on that a little bit, because I'm wondering if, and it might be too much to say it here on a public meeting, but I'm going to say it anyway, which is that if we were to prioritize this as a budget item and increase the amount, could we potentially have better matches? And so I'm kind of looking at this as 249. I think this is a great idea. I don't want to speak against it, but I think it's such a good idea that I'm like, I'd be willing to put more money into it even. And I am also curious about the legality of it, because I know it is not exactly handing out money, but all of the organizations that were, and I know other states have done it, but not in North Carolina. I didn't hear anybody. The organizations were not municipalities that are handing out that money. And I know that there are issues about how money gets distributed, and ARPA had different stuff, but I would like to hear a little bit more about that specific part as well.
Yeah, I don't think, I don't know if there are any legal restrictions, just based on how many times it's been done. Gosh, what was your first point? I forgot. I think we could, and I think we still can do. I think it would be both and. I just think it's always best if you can use one-time money, use it, and then tap into the tax base if needed. But we can use one-time money to spark something significant, and that was my logic.
So one of the things that we do, we're always listening. That's one of the things that staff, and I see the attorney is back as well. But one of the things that we like to keep in focus is what actually has to happen once a consensus decision is made, even about a topic. Then once you have the idea or the topic down pat. You got to have a vendor to actually, or a partner to actually execute an agreement with, negotiate an agreement and execute the agreement. As a matter of fact, you had an agreement on your agenda for today that we are now sending back for further discussion and, further negotiation. So because we are in October, we're at the end of October, and the times that we're going to be able to receive direction from you is going to be limited, we will actually have to execute an agreement for this funding by December 31st with a subrecipient or grantee. And I invite the staff to, talk about what that timeline looks in terms of the decisions that the council need or the direction that you need to give us today.
So I would start out by saying that is the reason that we wanted to narrowly focus these dollars, because there is a lot of work in contract negotiation. There is a lot of work in having an organization that's eligible to receive funding with us without having a fiscal sponsor. There is also means testing and every other things that the city attorney's office can talk about when we're talking about providing resources. So we are okay with going in a different direction. We would prefer not to have to negotiate with multiple organizations in this time frame. An organization that already has accepted this type of funding that would be eligible to receive it from us, where there's low risk. So those are some of the issues and concerns, which is why we said earlier to you all in the last presentation, unless it's a lot of money, we would not want to go through a process of negotiating contracts again, just because of the timing and the number of contracts that we're managing already.
I would, just to get us down, just trying to make some decision or direction here, is United Way one of the organizations that we're already working with?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I would suggest that we and colleagues, I'll invite you all to, because this is the first time any of us are talking about this, I'd invite you to, if you see something, a different direction, state that case. But I'd love to work with them in establishing these types of accounts. They're an organization that's already working with the city. I think as far as the operationalizing of it, we would need to have those details. I guess that would, the working agreement is already in place in a sense to, I guess we would have to have an MOU around these dollars with whoever we would work with.
An agreement.
An agreement?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
My suggestion is to do, what do we call this? I just want to get these kids kicked off.
Yeah, baby bond, children's
Yeah,
savings
baby
accounts.
bond, children's
I mean,
savings.
so you're saying, is it easier since we already have a relationship with United Way
Yep.
to go there? Because the other group we could potentially work with would be like College Foundation of North Carolina, right? That does, college savings accounts. So like, so if that makes it slower, then United Way would also, United Way has been part of conversations about this idea going back several years. Eric, at United Way, yeah.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Senior Assistant City Attorney Carlos Hernandez. So with the child bond that you guys mentioned, it wouldn't necessarily be something that we can just give a financial gift to every child. Usually our state authority allows us for low income, for the welfare of our low income residents. So we could tailor it, but we can't just give a blanket cash infusion to everyone. And with ARPA, there's restrictions on what we can fund, but if the city still has available revenue replacement, then we can use that money for anything that the city already has state authority to spend on. So it would need to be a revenue replacement contract as well.
I just want to say that I would be super psyched to work on this with you if you wanted to work on it. I do think it's going to take a little bit longer than December 31st, unfortunately. And that's what I was saying is exactly that about who we distribute money to. And we might be able to, I talk with the city attorney's office and figure out when money goes into bonds, there are different restrictions and there might be other things that we can talk about. But I do think it might take us a little bit longer, but I would be like super excited to work with you on this. I'm super, super supportive of it. But to me, it sounds like we've got this time restriction. We've already seen these contracts come back to us, have to be reallocated. Like there's already been, even within the year's worth of ARPA allocations, we've already seen like getting down to the last minute. We've just got one that's been referred back tonight. And so to me, it feels like if we can identify an organization that is already approved and it's like the money goes, it would be better and easier. I definitely don't want to lose the money. I think everyone's sort of on board with that. So
I'm happy to meet as soon as this meeting ends and and go for the home run. So that's how I feel.
I'm just gonna let my colleagues decide and come back with a really great idea. That's where I'm at. I'm like, y'all can go do some work. I will say that this was, I mean, it sounds similar to how we had to do the small business, oh, I forgot what, the fund during COVID where like the city could do low interest loans and then the money came, the free money came from Duke. I mean, like there's ways to structure it where we means test it. City dollars or public dollars are going to those students, but then the folks that the private dollars could go to the, right? So there's all kinds of ways to
Absolutely,
structure it,
yes,
right?
yes.
So to Councilmember Cook's point, the timeline may not work, but the workaround, we've certainly had to figure that out for other issues. And so I know staff is gonna work diligently and come back. If we don't get it done with this money, I'm sure that I'm glad to see that folks are eager either way. Have fun working.
I wanted a helicopter, but y'all lack courage. So
Mayor Pro Tem, I would have thought you wanted a fire engine.
So I don't think you have any directions. Could we, I'm crazy enough to think it's possible, but I'm crazy enough to think that it's possible if we work with the organization that's already, if there's already a working relationship there. Is what I'm thinking of. I think it, based on what I'm hearing you all say, it would take a lot more if it's establishing a new relationship. So either we do this with an organization that we're already, working with, or we give more money to an organization we've already worked with, or we go with the original recommendation. Yeah.
So,
I second that. I don't know if we need to vote on this or what the process is, but I feel a second that.
so we, when we talk about an organization we're already working with or that we already have an agreement with, certainly you speak about it sort of generally, but anytime we have a new project or a new initiative, then we actually have to create a new agreement or amend an agreement that we already have, whether it's subrecipient agreement or a grant agreement. So in terms of the 249 that we're discussing today, and that would actually not be on the agenda 11 days from today because it's a presentation, it's not an action item. I see our staff smiling, everybody's ready to go out and work. But if we really had, at least something to work with until you are in another meeting to discuss it, it would give us a little more comfort that we could make the right decisions about the 249.
And I would also add, like, working with the organization, but creating an entire new scope of work that you normally negotiate and send back and forth, and you're looking at the number of cycles that we have in front of council. It takes a tremendous amount of time to go through. And I don't disagree. This is a great opportunity. We brought forward what we did because we want to be prudent in terms of making sure we take care of the staff that is already working on this program. But we would need to have something very soon that someone has agreed to take this on and then start negotiating an agreement that would have to go through the entire workflow in the organization and land on a council work session cycle.
You should see the amount of faith I have in you guys. I mean, y'all already proven that you're superhuman.
Well, it starts with you all, though. You'd have to identify an organization who's willing to do this, to take this work on.
I mean, I would be prepared to at least say that I think we all are in agreement that our employees are gonna get taken care of in our budget with our tax dollars, and I would like to see this money going out to the community as well. So that does, it sounds like that was what everyone is sort of leaning towards. So for that part of it, I'd be willing to say that.
Do staff need to, yeah, I guess that's a follow-up question I have. Like, it seems like, to Councilmember Cook's point, it seems like the recommendation to use the dollars internally is not one that the 7 of us are on board with. I think there's differences on what we want to do. Heard on the, not sure if we can get the baby bond thing kicked off, but there are other, I mean, El Futuro was named, there's other, right, like, there's, can these dollars be deployed quickly to another entity that the city has already contracted with, so they're basically in the pipeline? If it's clear that the baby bond dollars idea is just, there's not enough runway, right? There's just not enough runway to pull it off before December 31st. I guess, like, what, do you all need like a, you know,
Like a
1 and a
safety-
2, right?
safety
Like, do
valve.
this, try this. If it doesn't work, this is where it's going, right? Like.
So we have organizations who have completed their work, who've also asked for additional funding. You see the list of 31 organizations. So we are happy to look at those organizations that already have an agreement, extend their agreement, provide additional funding for those organizations. Again, we would prefer not to negotiate with multiple organizations. And again, the idea, the baby bond is a great idea, just the amount of work that would be required to do that. If we can get it done, we'll try, but it would start with us starting from scratch with an agreement with an organization and negotiating that. So we have several organizations. I think Knox Street was one who's done a great job with their work.
Yeah, they did
Off the
a
top of
great
my head,
job.
Book Harvest. There are other organizations who have fulfilled their contract. They were early on, and so they've completed their deliverables. And they've asked us, if you have additional funding, let us know, because we can use it. That is an option.
So you're saying those are so, like, that's a fallback. If we try our best on baby bonds and timing is not gonna work out, we do have fallbacks. That's kind of to your point, right?
Yeah, I just want to know from the staff
Yeah.
perspective.
We have
I think it's going to be pretty clear in the next few days, like, yo, this is too big. It's not gonna, we can't make it go in the timeline with these dollars. So what's the next option? And I think we're going to have that answer sooner than later. And so I don't want to have to go through a whole other agenda cycle to figure out, well, what's the 2?
Right.
Or the 3, or what? That's what I'm trying to figure out here.
Do you think that we could get a list of organizations that have requested more that we've already worked with, and then potentially you can? Ooh, and then potentially we can send you other ideas, and we could actually like see who would be, if the bonds don't work out, like who would be someone that would be easy for y'all to negotiate with. Is that possible?
So we have 2 cycles, agenda cycles.
Yeah.
So to clarify, you're saying we would send you organizations that request funding. You all are going to send us back other ideas, and then what's going to be the vetting process for that?
It seems like we should ask staff to recommend to us what are some options as a fallback. That seems like more.
Well, you had just mentioned that some people that we've already had ARPA funds have asked for more. I just am curious to know like what those are, but I don't need them, I guess. I just thought it
Yeah,
might make things
think
easier.
We're gonna go down a rabbit hole. Just,
Yeah,
they're
we
gonna
don't
say,
need
"Oh,
another
we want
process.
it, we want it. I mean, I would, just to say it clearly, I'd love to try the baby bonds. And if it doesn't work, then follow your recommendation.
Just to follow up on that, I want this to go to kids. I think maybe that's something that we could all get on board with, is this should go to young people. And there are a number of nonprofits on here that are serving children. It feels like that's kind of a priority that's emerging from up here. If the baby bonds are not an option, that it goes to an organization that serves children. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, well, we also, Latino Credit Union is doing a version of this. And I
Yes,
think
with ARPA
if
funding,
we,
yes.
with ARPA money, if we add the means test concept to it, it still opens it up for matching funds. And we can enhance this 249 to be whatever that may be. I should be getting a report from Wells Fargo today, but Capital One is already doing this. Self-help is doing some version of it as well. Working with DPS Foundation, you know, I think that there's a greater opportunity for this to grow. And if we can't, you know, just do it flat out with, you know, an organization that we're working with in another capacity, we still have to create an agreement. I would suggest maybe going through Latino Credit Union to expand the scope in which we cover it, and that means working with DPS Foundation. That way we don't have to do a whole vetting process, it's already there. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, and the reason why I had Councilmember Covey, the reason why I didn't initially say the credit union, because I didn't want any preconditions, but I think I don't think I mean, they're pretty flexible. I think they would open it up. But to the attorney's office, regarding just, let's say a family is facing, or they face negative financial impact as a result of the pandemic, does that meet the muster?
Are you talking about ARPA generally or
Yeah.
ARPA specifically or revenue replacement generally?
Yeah, well, the point came up earlier when you were saying, about the,
ARPA.
yeah.
So yes, there's several categories that can be interpreted to include financial hardship.
Okay. That's enough for me. Yep. Thank you so much. Thank you. Colleagues, let's take a quick break. And we have one more presentation. And then we'll come back. Oh, and then we have closed session. I guess we can go ahead and get started. Well, I'd like Councilman Riss to be here. Fun fact, over 2 million people have early voted in North Carolina. Over 2 million. So showing up. $2,008,168 people. Let's go ahead and get started. Oh, there he is. Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. To the mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members, thank you for the opportunity to present a executive recruitment plan for the city manager position. Today, I'm joined by two other colleagues, Montique McClary, who is joining us online, and Montique is our Assistant Director of the Employee Experience Teams, and then Jim O'Donnell, who is behind me. He said he's a PIP today. He's singing backup. He is a talent acquisition manager, so he's here as well in case you ask any questions that he will need to answer. Our goal today. Oh, and by the way, my name is Robin Nguyen. I'm the Director of Human Resources for the City of Durham. Our goal today is to present a very transparent executive recruitment process. It's our hope that we're going to provide date estimates, goals, and process with the hope that the process is very clear and it answers many of your questions today. However, during the course of this presentation, if you should have questions, please feel free to ask. Can we go to next slide, Jim? Next slide. Okay, so we're going to just kind of jump right in. I want to be mindful of everyone's time. With the assistance of our great communications department, HR intends to draft a job posting in the form of an executive recruitment brochure for the city manager position. Now, what is a brochure? A brochure is really aimed at attracting and engaging potential executive level candidates by presenting the city, presenting all of the desirable traits of the city. It typically helps us with our branding. It also helps us with job or role clarity because we also list some of the responsibilities within that job. It'll also help us with promoting the city's culture. We do a piece on communication that we would like to share there. It also allows us to highlight benefits and opportunities that the incumbent could experience, such as a compensation package, and that would include, whatever council instructs us to include in terms of that compensation package. And then lastly, a brochure typically has what we call a call to action. And that is to encourage the potential candidate to apply or to provide them information on where they would like to inquire, if they should have questions, and then prompting them to really quickly engage in the recruitment process by really identifying when the position should close. So we typically, in my experience in doing this, and I've been around the block a couple of times. I've been in HR for about 37 years and have done this type of recruitment many, many times. And whenever I put together a brochure, my recommendations usually would include city information as well as demographics. As I said before, information about the role, certainly qualifications, as well as a salary range and benefits. Next slide, please. As I said, HR recommends that, or in your packet, you'll see that HR is recommending the position to post for about 30 days. And the reason why we're recommending 30 days is because it will go over a holiday period. So why is that important? That's important for a couple of reasons. If we typically, I've found much success in posting positions over a holiday because it allows a person to really kind of take their time on their submission. And that submission includes their resume, their cover letter, and their application or whatever supporting documents that they would like to include. But it really gives them time as opposed to that typical weekend to really work on it. And so you typically see some pretty quality submissions. So we want to recommend a 30-day period over the Thanksgiving holiday. Next, I'm sorry, it is our plan to post on national channels. These are some of the ones that we typically use, but of course there may be others. Government jobs is where all of our positions land. Certainly LinkedIn for more executive level positions. ICMA, we do have a relationship with them. So we would post there. National, North Carolina League of Municipalities, we have posted there on occasion. And then diversity and diversity jobs are another two sites that we would want to consider because, again, we want to have a diverse posting and a diverse pool of candidates. Am I going too fast? Okay, just want to make sure.
No, good.
Okay, the next, we're already at candidate screening. So let's say we've posted that position for 30 days and now we have over 300 candidates, right? So now someone needs to screen those candidates. Whenever a candidate applies, they would actually be applying to our NeoGov site, which is the city's regular website. We're not going to wait until December the 10th to really go through all of those resumes. We're actually going to be looking at them regularly throughout that 30-day period. And what we're looking at them for is to determine whether or not that person meets the minimal qualifications. Our system is such that, certainly you can apply and answer questions the way you like to, but we're going to be looking at resumes to ensure that that person's qualifications line up with our needs. So we will, it would be, if we do go this route, it would be our plan to look at resumes on a regular basis during that 30-day period. HR, it would be our intent to narrow that pool of applicants for further review by the council. And in order for us to do that, we would want to build a SharePoint site. And if a candidate is qualified, we would create a folder with that candidate's information on that SharePoint site. And then all of that person's information would go in that one folder based on that person's name. We would alert council that those positions, that we do have candidates on the SharePoint site. We would actually send a link to all of you so that you would know that we do have candidates on SharePoint, and you would be able to go in at any time and take a look at them. Okay. Any questions about that? Okay, great. So now we've looked at all of the candidates and we decided, okay, it's interview time. The question, we would come back to this group and ask, what are your desires around the interview process? Do you want to do phone screens? Do you want HR to do phone screens? Or would this group like to do them? Would you like to just go straight to the interview process? And if you decide to do the interview process, would you like to do that virtually or would you like to do that in person? We would work with, thank you, Jim. We would work with your staff to coordinate those interviews. One of the things that, with an interview, it's really important to really take a more systematic approach. So by that, we mean we would want to have a structured program for that, meaning that we would want to have predefined questions. So not just, why are you interested, but maybe some key questions that get at the qualifications that this group would identify. We would also certainly want to make that competency-based, and that's very typical when you're looking at leadership or problem-solving, technical expertise, budgeting types of questions. And then we would want to also recommend a consistent scoring mechanism so that all candidates are scored against the same criteria so that we don't run into any problems later. And then we would also want to make sure that we're working with our legal department to make sure that whatever we're doing in terms of questions that, that they are all job related. So that we're staying focused on what we said we would do or what we were looking for in the brochure. So that would allow us to work with, again, we would work with the department, your coordinators to work on that interview coordination. Jim, Montique, and I would work with your folks to do that. Next slide, Jim. Once we are further along in the process, we would want to certainly reference check and background check people. That's very important. So we would want to verify the candidate's experience, their education, as well as their qualifications. And we have a mechanism by which to do that. And then also we would want to do standard background checks to include the city's criminal and employment history background check. Also, we would like to, we could also assist City Council with, City Council and legal with putting together job information. For example, if you wanted the average salaries for city managers within, a 50-mile radius, we can certainly pull that information and have that available to you. And in fact, that's probably a discussion point for our next meeting or our next recommended meeting, because again, we're putting a range in the brochure. So we would want to talk through that. Next slide, Jim. Here are just a few of the vendors that we would use for some of the work that we would need to do, although the work would be done internally. So like the recruitment process, these are some of the vendors. Here's vendor costs for some of the vendors that we use, and they're nominal costs, and because we already have agreements in place with these vendors. Next. The next two slides are really based on the timeline, and the timeline is subject to change based on availability, based on other variables and directions that we receive from council. I wanted to make sure in putting together the timeline and working with several folks to do that, I want to make sure that you all are very much aware of everything, some of the commitments that we would need in terms of meetings and things of that nature. So we put together this timeline to discuss, and I kind of want to walk through this with you. So skipping today, if we get direction from council to certainly proceed, then we would come back to you on 11/7 with a job description and the brochure that would go out to, that we would use to post a position. And then on 11/10, we would want to advertise the position in some of those diverse sites that I mentioned before. As you will see on 12/10, the position expires at 11/59, which means that it would actually come down and no one would be able to apply after that. And then on 12/12, we would again make sure that all of you have the link to the SharePoint site so that you can go out and take a look, see what's out there. Initially, this was a 12/12 date, but certainly we can get that as we go through the process. On 12/19, we are recommending a closed session to discuss and determine which candidates will advance to the next phase, whether it's a phone screen or something else. We are making that recommendation that it would be a phone screen. HR can complete the phone screen on your behalf. The only thing that we would ask is that we get questions from all of you so that we know what we're asking during these screens. And then we would want to finish up our screens by 1/3 of 2025. so that we can come back to council with the information. Once we do the phone screen, again, all of that information goes into that person's folder. So once that phone screen is complete, we'll automatically just kind of keep putting things in that person's folder online. Next slide. Thank you, Jim. We would be asking for another closed session on 1/9 so that we can better understand how council would like to proceed with the interview process. Do you all want them to be in person, or do you want them to be virtual? We would want to get guidance from you on how you would want to do that. And then between 1:13 and 2:10, and again, that could float a little, but we would ask that we could conduct candidate interviews during that period of time. We're giving ourselves really about 3 weeks to do that. Understanding that sometimes we may have to make flights, hotel accommodations. So we want to make sure that we have ample time to get candidates in. And then on 2/20 of 2025, we are recommending another closed session to review the finalists and to get salary information, or to get what you would like us to do next. And then on 2/21, we would actually start the background check process for the finalists using the city-approved vendors that I mentioned before. Next slide. So with that, hopefully I didn't go too fast, but I wanted to give you as much information as possible about our process, so you can, excuse me, you can inform us on next steps you'd like us to take.
Thank you so much. Colleagues, we have the presentation before us. Manager Page just whispered in my ear that there's no need for this because she's going to stay another year.
Oh, thank you so much.
Okay.
I thought I saw your mouth moving. Thank you.
October surprise, right? No. Okay, no, thank you. Obviously, colleagues, the first thing we see here is we will have to revisit the interim conversation. So we'll get there, but in regards to this process, let's go around.
I just want to say thank you to Director Wynn. We always talk about how great our staff is, but I'm like looking at this timeline and it is stressing me out how quickly it's going, but in a good way, I'm just like, y'all have really, I know that you can get it done. And I'm also like, this is 3 months from now, and that is incredible. I just want to say, like, it's just incredible.
It's a great staff. We have a great staff.
I know that to be true. So I'm not surprised. I'm just like, wow, this is amazing. Just for my understanding, the results or the phone interviews and then the actual interviews, whether in person or virtual, y'all, I know you said that there was like, y'all were going to have a rubric or something. And so we'll just get those reports at some point before we meet in closed session. What does that look like?
Yes. So if you decide to do phone screens, and based on those phone screen results, we'll have that rubric that would actually be included in that person's folder. So you can go out and see it. So once that's done, we print it off, we upload it. Okay. So that's immediately available right after that phone screen is complete.
And would it be the same if there was an in-person or?
No, it would be different competencies.
Okay.
Typically a phone screen, we're screening to make sure that person meets the minimum qualifications.
Gotcha.
So if you ask for, 15 years of experience, we're going to ask them to tell us about their 15 years. And if they can't get there on 15, then we would denote that in our notes.
Gotcha. So what, when we go to the January 13th through February 10th interviews, what is that? What deliverables do y'all get from that? Where does it go?
So that is if in the event you all wanted to hold interviews. So whether that's in person or virtual, I gave you about a 3-week window to have that because of schedules. I know all of you are super busy, so I wanted to give enough time. You all may say, hey, we only want to see 2 people, and you do it the first week. Then that pushes the timeline up. Or you say, hey, I want to see 10 people. That could make it longer. So it just depends. It depends on you, on the council.
And I guess my only other question in there is like, does HR have a recommended rubric, or is this like?
Yes.
Yes, okay,
Yes,
great.
we do.
Well, I
We
love
do.
that
And
for
we will,
us.
we will
I love
work.
this council, but I love that also for this council specifically.
Yes,
So-
we will work very closely with our legal team as well. And just in case we're challenged on something, we will definitely work with our attorney, our HR attorney, to make sure that our rubric lines up with the job, with the brochure that we want to create.
Great. Well, I appreciate all of this information, and I'm looking forward to hopefully a great pool of candidates. So those are my questions.
Yeah, thank you for putting all of this together. I am happy with this timeline. I'm happy with what you've laid out for us. As far as the email for the feedback on the position, information qualifications, that has not gone out, right?
No,
So
no, this
we
is.
can expect to receive that in the next few days, assuming this gets the thumbs up from.
So if you give me the thumbs up, the next thing we would do is work with our communications department to start building out that brochure. One of the things that we would need from you before we build out the brochure are your thoughts relative to the qualifications and the experience. It would be our hope, and I don't think I even brought it up, but it would be my hope that we would send out a survey to this group and you all would complete the survey. We take that information, meld it together, and then we put that in the brochure.
And then, okay, and then you come back to us November 7th?
November 7th, and we review the brochure. We get a thumbs up or thumbs down, whatever edits we need to make. We'll have a couple of days to do that. We'll make those edits and then we'll post it.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm comfortable with this process. Thank you.
Doing the wrong one. Hi, thank you for this. This is great. I just have a couple of questions. So with your rubric that you're creating, are you also going to use the responses to our survey?
Mhm.
Okay. And then
Absolutely.
will we get a chance to see that rubric at the time with the brochure?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
We
And
can
then if we
build
have
that at it. Yeah.
If we have feedback, we can provide it then?
Absolutely.
Okay.
When we send you the survey, there are going to be some open-ended boxes there as well.
Yeah, like a scale.
So we'll have qualifications, competencies. You'll pick, what it's important to you. And then I also want to give you a couple of boxes so you can type in your thoughts and feelings, and then we'll convert that into the brochure, and we'll work with Beverly's team to do that.
And then
And legal, of course.
The other, just quickly, y'all, if we do a closed session on the 19th, it'll have to be in the morning. I'm leaving that work session early to catch a plane at 5 p.m. So I just saw it on the timeline. So I'm just flagging that now. I guess the other question I have is during the interview process, how are we imagining that process to be? Are we just doing like Q&A? Are we trying to think about a process where we create a simulated job and like
Assessment centers?
Yeah, well, it's assessment centers, but y'all could do it. You don't need to hire somebody outside is what I'm trying to say.
Yes, that's the term we normally use is assessment centers. We can do that, but one of the things that we want to do kind of closer to the end of the process for the top 2, maybe 3 candidates, if you will, is we do want to do some sort of EQI type of assessment where they're really looking at their leadership abilities, skills and competencies, and they're being evaluated, so they'll complete that. They'll be evaluated against that. For those candidates that complete that process, we will actually upload that information into the folder.
Thank you. And then my other question is around interviewing and finalists. My experience, so I used to do that professionally. My experience is that we often want to have at least 2 because somebody may decide not to take the job at the end of the day. And so I don't want to be in a position where we've all picked one and then that doesn't result.
Yes.
And then I am curious, often you can do a round of virtual and then get to your finalists and have them come in person. And so that would be my desire is if we decide to do interviews virtually, but then whoever the finalists are, if we could get them to come in person to have that last piece where we get to meet them. So that's my only kind of adjustment on the timeline because it may impact the timeline.
I did not put it in this particular
presentation, but in my past experience, we've also had, we've done exactly that, where when the person actually came in, the top two, they actually met with community leaders as well. And then they also met with council members.
Perfect.
So we can do that. I would just need to know the names of the community members. And we work with them to make sure that they have questions and they understand protocols and what they can ask and what they can't ask.
Perfect. So that would be my one
Mhm.
addition to this timeline is
Yes,
to add
okay.
that kind of component. Other than that,
Okay.
this looks great. Appreciate all the work. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. That's my wrist.
Thanks, Dr. Nguyen. Appreciate the thought and the sort of like the careful and complete timeline. I guess my question, maybe relates to some in part, is that it seems like a lot of this hinges around that December 19th point where you're assuming we've got a bucket of folks who are all interested in interviewing. And that could be like 20 people, it could be like 5 people, right? And so your timeline has us doing either we or you all doing some phone screens first. So it seems like, I mean, I guess my question is it possible that if we got to that point and there were just like a small number, 3 to 5 candidates, then we could speed up the process and just say we go straight to like in-person
Interviewing.
interviews, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it's all contingent on what we
It's
come
all-
up with on the 19th. Okay. That's great.
Absolutely. You're
Okay.
not obligated to phone screen. If that's what if you all want to go straight to interview, you say, hey, Robin, I want to do community meetings and have a virtual interview and then have them come back and do it in person. Absolutely, we can
Yeah.
facilitate
So
that
phone screens were just a way to sort of like
to
reduce the
narrow
pool.
that
Yeah,
pool
yeah.
and to make sure that that person really does meet the qualifications.
The other question is, so in turn, I like the idea of engaging the community, but is it also the case that in some cases it may be for the candidates, they may need to keep things still confidential? So is that maybe not always possible if you've got a public meeting with someone that wants to keep their candidacy confidential in their own community, right?
We let them know, if there's going to be a community meeting, that would actually be in the brochure. So that way they would understand that if there is some level of confidentiality that they want us to maintain, then, if they're selected as a finalist, they know that it's very possible that could get out.
Okay, thank you.
We try
Appreciate
to make sure they know that very
From the
early in the
outset, yeah.
process.
Okay, thank you much.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Madam Director. Good to see you. One of the things that's not reflected in this timeline, and it's not your wheelhouse, is that this timeline as it's presented now takes us past the seat being vacant,
Yes.
which would speak to the need for an interim. If this timeline goes as it's printed, we would need to consider an interim. First point. Second point, I mean, this looks great. I'm not at a place where I don't know if this is going to be from where I am, and I don't think I would like. I haven't had opportunity, at least for me, and it would need to be in closed session to discuss some other alternatives with my colleagues. That has nothing to do with you this time. So
Okay.
this looks great,
Okay.
but from where I sit, I think with what some of the big ticket items that are facing the city, particularly in the new year after this coming election, I think there's some other things I'd like to talk about with fully endorsing this process if we get to this process. But for me, I think there's at least one other conversation I'd like to have
Sure.
with my colleague. That has nothing to do with you, but this looks great. But just a note of advisory to my colleagues that this timeline takes us past the seat being vacant, and we would need to insert somewhere in here consideration for an interim if this is the way we're going. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I agree. That was my initial point starting out. We're going to have to, obviously. To my colleagues, I think that, their community is a broad term. I think, we represent the residents of Durham. So that's that part of the community. I think the other part is, the community in which our key stakeholders are the people that the city does, business and partnership with. And the manager, the folks that the manager, her office and apparatus has to work with. I think establishing that type of key stakeholder engagement roundtable at a certain point in the process, but I would say later when we get to like the finalists to help sort of inform. The other thing I was interested in is the application just being general. Like, are there some criteria we can put in just to kind of reduce or be more specific when they were applying, because I mean, 300 people applying. I mean, for Derek, the position Derek is holding, there was 180 applicants. You know, so is there a way we can reduce
Yes.
that down a little bit? Like,
Yes, but it really depends on the person who completes it. We can post all sorts of criteria. Jim is great at asking those questions, and we actually put them in the application. But then some people will say, I got a little bit of that. So they'll check it. And so that means that it'll get through our system as an approved or as a qualified candidate. And that's why we have to look at all of them to ensure that it's not the way they answer the questions, but the person really is qualified. We look at the resume, we look at the application as well. The screening part, you can just leave that up to Monty, Jim, and myself. We will certainly take care of that.
okay,
Jim will get 100, I'll get 100, Monty will get 100. We'll split it up.
cool. And as far as the key stakeholder engagement part, that's something you can insert.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we would put that in anyway, because again, to Councilman Riz's question, they need to understand where confidentiality, where we may not be able to fully maintain confidentiality. And when they're working with a key stakeholder, I can't have the key stakeholder sign a confidentiality agreement. So we want to make sure that the person knows that, that is a part of our process. That way that person can make the decision. And again, once we identify those top 3 people, or top 5, whatever number you all like, then we will make sure that they are aware, very much aware of how confidentiality will work throughout this process.
Okay. All right, thank you. Colleagues, I would also encourage that we do some stakeholder engagement with our constituents. Because asking HR to go out and do community sessions like we do with the budget we're just not going to get any consensus. But also that's our job. And again, we have set precedent that the way we do our constituent engagement is through this process, through coming to council. And that's just one way. But I hope eventually we'll be able to get back to the retail politics of going out and talking to your constituents, the ones who vote us in. So that we don't overwhelm staff with getting outside of their scope of work of, going to do our job. Okay, well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Please let us know what you need from us. Right now, I think we're planning to come back on the 7th with a brochure draft for your consideration. So more to come at that time.
We need to determine, yeah, I think, so we need to determine also when we are going to discuss the interim process, colleagues. And I need to, Fred, is that a closed session discussion that we need to?
I think it would depend on what you're discussing. Exactly.
Yeah, it's going to be people, so I think it's personnel. So we're going to have to request a closed session maybe at the next. Yeah.
I have something at 2:30. I can probably be back by the end, but if that's November 7th, I requested an absence on November 7th. So I'm just saying for timing wise, if we knew that the closed session would not be until 4:30, that I could make it, but before then I'm probably not going to be able to.
You're walking up here. Okay. All right. Okay. So we're going to need to request a closed session to discuss that. And we'll do that as soon as possible. So I'm going to say yes, November 7th. And I'm going to hope that you're back so we can make sure you're part of it. And we'll just communicate and work on the timeline. And you have not been the reason why we've been going and having long meetings. So we're actually doing really good. And you're here as well. So I think we're going to be fine. Teasing you. Yeah, we need to do, before we get there, because by December 19th is.
Can we also do a closed session after the meeting on the 4th, that Monday? Why not?
That night? Oh, the night before election?
That's one other option. Yeah, short agenda.
We could do a short closed session before the meeting as well.
On the 4th.
We can do a closed session dinner meeting. No. November 4th. We can come in early,
Yeah.
okay? All right, so,
Yeah, I'm going with it, but we can shorten that up. Yeah.
so when is the next time we meet? Is that the next time we meet? So would I need to request that closed session today, Fred?
You can, I mean, you can schedule it so that
it'll
everyone
be
will be
before the
prepared
meeting.
for it. That's correct. You could just do it before the meeting
Yeah,
as well.
I'm thinking 6 p.m. Yeah, so we'll be up here. Okay. So do I need to suspend the rules to request this, or can I just request it? Okay,
You don't have to suspend the rules.
Okay,
Just
well,
announce it. That's
I'll-
what your intent is, to call the closed session
Yes,
at the
I'll
next meeting for the
I'll
purpose of
entertain a-
discussing the
okay,
interim position.
so I'm going to request a closed session to, well, we can do the council suite conference room. I'm sure we can find a venue. All right, colleagues, I'll entertain a motion.
I just want to make, so we're saying Monday, November 4th at 6 PM. Okay, I just want to make sure because
Colleagues, I'm gonna entertain a motion to go into closed session on November 4th at 6 p.m. We don't have to suspend the rules.
So moved.
Right.
You just said, yeah.
Oh,
We don't
okay.
even have to.
So I don't need a motion. Okay, so colleagues, thumbs up? November 4th, 6 p.m. All right, sounds good. And
Motion to
let's,
go into closed session now, right?
no, we already did it. We already did it. So that'll be, and let's just say in the council suite. Council suite, November 4th. All right, and thank you. We'll look forward to meeting you soon. And after closed session, we'll provide a report to you to follow that process, because I know there'll have to be a contract written up for the interim as well. So we'll give you that direction. All right, colleagues, at this time, we are going to go into closed session. We'll give it a few minutes for us to lock down the building or the room. Sorry. All right, I'll pass it over to the city manager to settle the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'm so sorry. I wanted to quickly congratulate Erin. I know she's not here, for receiving her award at the 89th Municipal Lawyers Association thingy. But she received Fred, what did she receive?
It was a fellow, as I understand it, a fellow, well, no, you go ahead and tell me exactly I was not there.
I had the pleasure to be the one to nominate Aaron Miles, our Senior Assistant City Attorney, and at the 89th International Municipal Lawyers Association Conference that happened this month in Orlando, she received the Young Public Lawyer Award. And it's given to someone who exemplifies good lawyering, public service, and also maintains a work-life balance to make retention in this profession long-term.
It's awesome. Thank you. Congrats, Erin, if you're watching. All right, I'll now pass it over to Manager Page to settle the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and members of the council, I have for your city council meeting on consent, item 1 and items 3 through 8. GBA public hearings, items 11 through 13.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve the, what am I doing? Yeah, I'll entertain a motion to set the agenda.
So moved. Oh, second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all opposed. All right, well now, give it a few minutes to go into closed session. Colleagues, let's get right to it. So staff